Okay, here we go on another Miami Heat adventure. No, wait a minute. Sorry, this isn't the Miami Heat. Hi, this is Warren Redlick. I'm going to talk today about two Tesla topics. Hopefully you can all hear me. So I'm going to go ahead if I see it. Don't bother commenting unless you can't hear me. Um, don't bother putting anything in the chat if you can't hear me. It's okay. I'm pretty sure you can hear me. So today I'm going to talk about two topics. I'm going to talk about Tesla energy. Tesla energy, and I'm going to talk about the Tesla transition. I think there's this big issue about how Tesla transitions from the Model 3 to the Model Y to the new Model Y to the Tesla compact robotaxi. But before we get into that, I'm gonna talk about some news. I'm gonna have a little bit of news to discuss. And for those of you who are just watching and you want to skip ahead of something, I created this little outline here, and you can kind of figure out the little green box will show us where we are, and hopefully I can stick with the green box. So, the first thing I wanted to do is thank the Vasa Law Firm and all my Patreon supporters for helping this channel, for helping me do what I do. I get to have, the Patreon support lets me try different things, experiment, and you can support this channel on Patreon and links below. You can also buy t-shirts. I'm wearing the Starship t-shirt today. Let me show that again. People tell me I don't show it long enough. This t-shirt is based on something Elon said about stretching the tanks. You could get different configurations of Starship if you shrink the payload and stretch the tanks. So you get more fuel and less payload. It helps with the tyranny of the rocket equation. This is one of the most popular shirts on the website. Mostly I'm going to be talking about Tesla today, but I'm really more of a SpaceX fan. Sorry. So before we get into that, I want to talk about news. Before we get into everything else, I want to talk about news. So we'll start with Starship and SpaceX. SN10, serial number 10, or Starship number 10, is getting ready for a test flight. There's a lot of activity. I recommend people watch the NASA Space Flight channel on YouTube. That's the channel I check pretty much every day to see what's happening with Starship. They have really good coverage of what's happening in Boca Chica and elsewhere. There was people probably already know this, NASA managed to land a rover on Mars. It was a very complicated process of getting it to Mars, and multiple steps once it got close to Mars of what released from what and what went into the atmosphere and what got released there, and there's a parachute. And I thought it was really interesting to compare that Starship's plan is to fly Starship there and have Starship land. There's so many complicated steps that were involved in getting Perseverance to land on Mars. And, it all worked, but the more complicated you make the process, the more likely you are to have a problem in the middle of it. And the idea of just flying Starship to Mars and landing Starship is a lot simpler. It might not be easier, but it's simpler, if that makes sense. I see some questions like about the Boring Fund. We're going to do a Q&A at the end, so we can talk about questions at the end. People complain if I answer questions in the middle, so I'm going to go through my outline and get there. In news, SpaceX news, SpaceX had a funding round where they raised, I think it was $850 million. It values the company at about $74 billion, which I believe is up from around $50 billion. This is lower than I thought. I thought SpaceX would be valued at $100 billion at this point. Oh, thank you, Mel, for your support. Very much appreciated. I thought this was low. I think SpaceX is clearly worth more than this. I made a video this week where I talked about Starlink. And before I hit that, Elon, do I have the tweet? Deep chasm. So Elon tweeted, I don't know if you guys can read this. Let me make this bigger. And I'll move over. So Elon was tweeting about Starlink, and it's this tweet here. Elon talked about SpaceX needs to pass through a deep chasm of negative cash flow over the next year or so to make Starlink financially viable. It costs a lot of money to get the satellites up into space. It costs a lot of money to build them. When using Falcon 9 to launch them, it costs a lot to get them into space. He says here, Starlink is a staggeringly difficult technical and economic endeavor, but the cost of end users will improve. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that's going to be huge. My cousin lives in the area where it's likely to happen soon, and he's really excited about it. He has very, very poor internet access in a rural area in southern New Hampshire. So I'm looking forward to him getting it and me getting some inside information from him about it. But I made a video. If you check my channel, I made a video. The last 2 or 3 videos I made a video about Starlink. And there was this is still in the SpaceX news category. SpaceX received an award of $900 million to, this isn't news. That they received the award isn't news. That's less recent. But $900 million for something called the Rural Development Opportunity Fund to build out Starlink so that rural people in the United States would have better access to broadband internet. And the news is, in the last week or so, an organization called the Fiber Broadband Association, which represents companies that provide broadband internet access by fiber optic cable, submitted a report critiquing the Starlink plan for the RDOF. And it was really odd because fiber providers don't have any intention of extending fiber to these people, because it's very expensive to extend fiber to rural areas. And really what I think is going on is they know Starlink is going to compete with them in their business, and they want to take away any funding Starlink gets to make it harder for Starlink to succeed, to give fiber operators a longer window where they can earn outsized profits for providing crappy service. So I did this video where I went through. They did a webinar, their own webinar with their own membership. Thank you, Matthias. Don't forget to move that green frame. I am on news. Thank you, Matthias. You are a lifesaver. Thank you, Matthias. Very much appreciated. I have to do Tesla Q post-interview video. No, I'm not going to do that. Zero Affinity, thank you for your support. I decided not to go through. For those who missed it, I did a video this last week where I interviewed John Engel, who is a Tesla Q investment analyst who's just totally full of it. And it was like a 3-hour-long interview. And the problem with it is there was so little substance on his side. There's no point in summarizing it. He had no substance. He would say some blanket statement, and then I would ask him to explain and provide more detail and provide more substance. And again, he didn't have any. He didn't have answers. He didn't have numbers. He just waffled. And actually, related to that, I wanted to mention that it's my plan going forward with this Sunday live stream that I'm going to stop doing interviews on Sundays. I may do short interviews on Sundays, but most likely I'm going to change the interviewing. When I do an interview with somebody, which I have a couple coming, I'm going to do them midweek in the evening, in the afternoon or evening on the US East Coast time, rather than doing them on my Sunday live stream. That way the Sunday live stream becomes a more consistent thing. That's just sort of trying to figure out what works for the channel, what works for the audience. That would be you. So, anyway, I just did this Starlink video. I wanted to get back to that. When I looked at their analysis, it really, I was having trouble figuring out how Starlink would work. And one of the things I learned from their report and their video is an individual Starlink satellite is projecting down in a cone and receiving signals in a cone. The antennas reach a certain radius underneath the satellite. Something Elon had said confused me, and I thought he said it had an 8-mile radius, which is really small. Which I'm like, okay, that's why they need 44,000 satellites. Sorry. I get so many spam phone calls. If somebody would tell me how we can get Congress to get rid of spam phone calls, I'd really appreciate it. And I know there's private solutions, and I stink at not achieving them. But I think it's time for spam phone calls to end. So there it is again. I get warranties and I think Apple service is calling today that I need help with my Apple computer. It's amazing how many ridiculous calls we get. So I did this Starlink. I reviewed their analysis, and I talked about how the diameter is much bigger than I thought. And the reason that matters is because when a satellite is over the ocean, there aren't very many customers. So if it has a very narrow circle, then most of the time it's over an ocean, it can't serve anyone. But if it has what looks like 1,000-kilometer diameter circle that it can cover, then it can be about 600 miles. It can be 300 kilometers into the ocean and still reach land and still serve customers on land. And there are customers on the ocean, but there aren't that many. So the satellites become a lot more useful if they have a much larger radius. And apparently maybe one of the, each antenna can only reach a certain area, but I don't fully understand the mechanics of it. But anyway, that led me to looking at my original assumptions about how much revenue Starlink could generate. Because I thought, well, if it's over the ocean 70% of the time, then it's over unpopulated areas maybe 80% of the time, and there's not a lot of revenue there, or 90% of the time. And then, people are asleep in the middle of the night, so it's not much revenue in the middle of the night. But you basically eliminate the poles. The Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle are probably not going to get much coverage. And that eliminates a lot of the land, the area, unpopulated area of the Earth, and you get to more population. It ends up, I came up with it maybe $100 billion a year in revenue, and the costs of launching Starlink are really low. Once you have Starship operating, once Starship is operating, it's launching 400 satellites at a time for about $2 million a launch. The launch cost drops to like $5,000 a satellite. Compare that to Falcon 9, which might be probably cost SpaceX, let's say it's $30 million for SpaceX for their own cost for launch. It's probably more than that, but let's say it's $30 million, and they launch 60 satellites. Well, now it's $50,000 a satellite, or maybe it's, I need to do the math. It's a lot more. So Starship is going to save a lot of money on the launch cost. Mass production is going to save a lot of money on the satellite cost. And I think you end up with an operating cost for Starlink less than $5 billion a year with revenue of more than $50 billion a year. And that's a lot of profit. And I think if you figure $50 billion a year and a 20 price earnings ratio, it's $1 trillion market cap for Starlink. So they've got to get over this chasm of negative cash flow. Let's go back to the chasm of negative cash flow. Got to get over the deep chasm of negative cash flow, which is why they did the funding round. And then it becomes this massive cash cow with incredible value. So it'll be interesting to see if Starlink succeeds and IPOs. My expectation would be that Starlink is going to IPO with a market cap well over 100 billion, maybe $500 billion. Be interesting to see where it is. If the IPO, this is one of those things where if the IPO is priced high enough, then you're not going to gain that much by joining in. You get good dividends and everything, but not that much. So, okay, turning to Tesla news. Oh, we'll call this Tesla news. Trying, Matthias. I'm trying. There were some price drops, small price drops on Model 3 and Model Y. I think it was $1,000 for the standard range Model 3. The long range Model Y dropped more, maybe $2,000. I forget how much it dropped. But the really interesting thing was the Model Y standard range vanished. There is no longer a Model Y standard range available. The only thing available are dual motor all-wheel drive Model Ys. The price on the long range Model Y here dropped a little bit. Thank you, Andreas. I don't see having Tesla charts on my time. I'm probably not going to do, thank you for the support. I'm probably not going to do another Tesla Q interview because they're so, they don't attract a big audience and they don't have substance. They just lack substance. I haven't found one that has any substance yet. It's a waste of time. And the audience, honestly, my experience, the people who follow this channel don't really care that much. There's a few people who are passionate about it, but most people don't care that much. Anyway, standard range Model Y is gone. That's going to lead into, or I'm going to talk about this later. When I come to this transition point, in the outline, we're going to talk about Model Y. It's going to be a big issue. Some other news, there are rumors that Tesla is going to be opening a factory to make cars in India. I did not think that was a reliable story. The story that I read was some government minister said Tesla's going to make cars in India. No idea if that guy has any authority or any inside knowledge. My personal opinion is that the Indian car market, while there are, well over 1 billion people in India, there are very few people in India who can afford a Tesla. And if you think about the next gigafactory, the next generation of gigafactories after Austin and Berlin will be producing more than 1 million vehicles a year, right? You're probably going to be producing more than, so you have to have a population that can afford to buy 1 million Teslas a year. And even if it's the compact robotaxi and it costs $25,000, there's only about 10 million households in India that have a household income of more than $30,000 a year. And $30,000 a year is probably not enough to buy a Tesla $25,000 car. And the average person doesn't buy a car every year. So I just don't think there's enough of a population that can afford that vehicle. If they did a minibus van thing, maybe that would work. If they're going to do batteries, if they're going to do battery storage, if they're going to do solar, there might be a lot of opportunities in India for that. I don't think the market for vehicles in India is very favorable to relatively high-end vehicles like Teslas, but I'm ready to be proven wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's not going to happen. I think that the four biggest car markets in the world are the United States, are China, the United States, Europe, and Japan. And we're going to see a gigafactory in Japan before we see a gigafactory in India. And we're probably going to see another gigafactory in China and another gigafactory in the US and another gigafactory in Europe, maybe the UK, before we see a gigafactory in Japan to make vehicles, maybe for some other purpose. Something's happening in Indonesia. We're not sure. They may make batteries in Indonesia. They may do more than that. Indonesia, for the people who don't know, is a very large country. I think it might actually have a higher average income than India. I could be wrong about that. I think so. So, on the stock side of things, Tesla stock fell about $100 from its peak. I think the peak was in late January, was around $880 a share, and now it's down to around $780 a share. People have been asking me why the stock fell, and I'll be blunt. I'm not a short-term stock analyst type of guy. When you look at my videos and I talk about Tesla, I talk about at the earliest 2022, and I'm really talking more about what's going to happen in 2025 and 2030. I think it's very, very hard to make short-term price predictions, and like more than half of investment is done by these Wall Street people who are looking at what happened in this last quarter and this quarter. They're not looking at 2022. They're not looking at 2030. What's his name? I think it was Matt Smith from Spark Spread just interviewed Gary Black, and I would love to interview Gary Black. Gary Black is a normally pro Tesla Twitter guy who's a longtime investor, who explained his reasons for selling his Tesla stock. And I found none of it compelling. It was all focused on, well, they didn't make their numbers in the fourth quarter and it doesn't look good in the first quarter. And well, what about 2022? What about 2025? And his estimates for Tesla 2025 are so far below mine. It's like, I would just love to ask him how many batteries. This is one of my questions for anybody who questions Tesla. And we did this with, what's his name? John Engel. I did this with him. How many batteries do you think they're going to make in a given year? And how much revenue does that translate to? And I didn't get Matt unfortunately did not ask him that question. I'm hoping to interview Matt, I think March 3rd on this channel, which is a weekday afternoon in the East Coast. But it's like one of those things like, well, it's just the simplest question that you can ask somebody. And Elon laid it out in the Q4 investor, battery day, the Q4 investor call. How many batteries do we make? How much revenue does that generate? How much profit is that? What's the margins? Really simple question to ask, and more people should ask that question of anybody who's skeptical of Tesla. How many batteries do you think they're going to make? How much revenue is that? And, Gary is caught up in the EV market share is going to grow this much, and he bases it on some sort of fictional EV market, which I don't believe in. But anyway, I'm not a short-term guy. I'm not the right person to ask, why did the stock go up 50 points or down 50 points? I think it's odd. Some of the rationale for why Tesla fell was because of Tesla's investment in Bitcoin. Tesla announced that they invest $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. Or it was disclosed, or somebody noticed that Tesla had invested $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. And this was supposedly a bad decision on Tesla's part. Meanwhile, Bitcoin went up. So Tesla has made about $500 million to $1 billion on its Bitcoin investment. And Wall Street seems to think that's a bad thing. How do you predict that? And the same thing with short-term stock prices. Why is Nikola not at zero? Nikola Motors and KLA. The company is a complete fraud. Everyone has exposed it as a complete fraud. There's no business there. And I think it's trading at like $30 or $40 a share when it should be at most it should be $10 a share, but it really should be zero. So if I can't explain why Nikola Motors is trading above zero, and I certainly can't explain why Tesla fell $100 a share. Why is there all this hype about Lucid Motors? If you follow my channel, I've made some videos about Lucid Motors. I don't see Lucid Motors as anywhere near what it claims to be. And there's this SPAC called CCIV that's supposed to acquire Lucid Motors, and they're up to like $50 a share, $60 a share. They don't have a car. They've never made a car. Their promises are unbelievable. It's not credible to believe that a company that's never made a car before is going to make a better car than the Model S. It's just not. Not. But they're trading high. I don't explain. I can't explain it. So, and full disclosure about Tesla, the stock dipped, and I had some free cash, and I bought a few more shares of Tesla at $773 a share, which I'm happy to report it's trading above that slightly. So I didn't lose money on that yet, and I don't. Again, this is a long-term investment. I'm holding this longer. I forget what happened, whether a bond came due or something happened. I had some free cash in an account, and I just bought a few shares. I didn't buy a lot. I already have so much that it's almost like trivial how much I bought, but well, I think it was 1%. I bought 1% of what I already have. So, one other news item. Let me put this up on the screen and get out of the way. There is a proposal in Congress, and I made a video about the Green Act. That would if the Green Act that's been proposed in Congress goes through, it's really, really big for Tesla. It's big for other companies as well. It's not just the EV tax credits. The Green Act has big benefits for solar, for grid storage, for Powerwall. It increases the credits. It extends them for longer. I calculated it was something like over the next, let's say 6 years, it's something like a $30 billion benefit to Tesla. You know, if Tesla's share of the value of those benefits works out to around 30 billion, and the EV credits are only like 2 or 3 billion of that. It's a lot that goes from solar and grid storage and all that. So, so there's this news story, I think this was yesterday or the day before yesterday, that President Biden is sort of caught because he's made these promises to go green, but as I had predicted in other contexts, he's got this problem that the unions don't want ununionized Tesla to get these benefits. They don't want the EV, the electric, they don't want the renewable benefits to affect union jobs, which is understandable. That's what they want. And so President Biden may not go along with the act that's been proposed in Congress. And there's all this other politics with it. Nancy Pelosi bought options in Tesla. There's a whole bunch of things going on here. And I don't want to get into a Republican-Democrat thing, so let's not go there. But that's news related to Tesla that's important. So I'm going to get into this stuff, but let me just see if there's any particular questions I want to address before I get into that. How long will the credits be applicable? Good question, John Smith. So currently the EV credits have expired for Tesla and for General Motors. The proposal in the Green Act, and I have a video that explains all this in detail if you check my channel, but the proposal in the Green Act would extend it basically for another, it sounds like it's another 400,000 cars, but it's actually 400,000 cars and then like another quarter or two after that. So it could be close to 1 million cars that Tesla would get the benefit on. And that actually has sort of a quasi-Osborne effect that people who are thinking about buying a Tesla might hold off. I'm probably going to talk about this a little bit in the transition section, that if you were thinking about buying a Tesla and you heard they might pass a tax credit and you're not going to get it unless you wait for it, you might not buy a Tesla in the first quarter. So will Tesla build a gigafactory in Ireland? I don't know. I think it makes sense to build a gigafactory in the UK somewhere, but I'm not sure. Biden can't pull the plug on oil without killing his re-election. I'm not sure about that. I don't claim to understand the dynamics of it. I think it's a bunch of things. The Giga Berlin Boring Fund. I'm going to talk about, ask me about the Boring Fund at the end. I don't want to talk about that now. Okay. Solar roof. Okay, so let's get into energy because somebody's asked about solar roof. So let's move into the energy topic. So I made a video this week about Tesla Energy. What happened was somebody called me. I have these sources that people, you get to this point, like I'm not like a big YouTuber, right? There's people who have a lot more subscribers than me, a lot more views than me, but we do have something of a following. I want to thank you for following. And some people who watch what I say and have words of wisdom for me, information that's helpful. So someone contacted me who knows a lot about some areas of Tesla manufacturing. And in particular, I would say related to Powerwall and Megapack, not just those two products, but those two products, maybe some PowerPack and some other things. And the important information in that conversation, I guess, would be that the cost of, there's two issues. The cost of making a Powerwall and the cost of making a Megapack, leaving out the batteries for a second. the cost of the rest of the hardware in a Powerwall or a Megapack is surprisingly low. And the other part of the conversation was Tesla has not really engineered or optimized to manage those costs and get them lower. That, let's say currently they're spending $1,000 on the hardware, leaving out the batteries. They're currently spending in the ballpark of I'm making up the number too, but let's say they're currently spending $1,000 on the hardware for a Powerwall, the case, the electronics, whatever. When Tesla puts their mind to it and puts their engineering talent to it, they're probably going to get that cost down below $500 to maybe $400. Because it's, just a case and some electronics that's not really complicated. Same thing with Megapack, that there's a structure to it, there's some electronics, it's important stuff, but once Tesla puts their mind to it, they're going to be able to it's not as vertically integrated as Tesla vehicles, and they're going to do more vertical integration. Like they just announced their own, I think they're making their own inverter now, which maybe they weren't doing before, and they're getting some efficiencies from that. So what that translates to, and what I'm working on a video about now is, I have been puzzled. Elon talked about, I think it was at Battery Day, Elon and Drew talked about how the energy side of the business was going to be as big or bigger than the vehicle side of the business. And my general sense was, well, yeah, but the vehicle side is going to generate more profits because of higher margins in FSD, especially the margins from full self-driving. So, I started digging down into this rabbit hole of, well, what will the margins be? What will the profit be on energy? I've never really looked at that. I've looked at revenue, but I haven't looked at profit. So going forward, I'm not talking about right now, but going forward, I believe all of Tesla's grid storage devices will use lithium iron phosphate cells. If you follow Battery Day, the expectation is that the nickel-based cells will get their costs down to around $60 a kilowatt hour or $55 a kilowatt hour. That's at the cell level. That's not at the pack or device level. Iron phosphate is significantly less expensive. The iron phosphate chemistry is significantly less expensive per kilowatt hour than nickel. I think it's less than half. But if you figure that iron phosphate cells are going to, if nickel's going to get down to $60 a kilowatt hour, if you figure lithium iron phosphate gets down to $40 a kilowatt hour, at $40 a kilowatt hour, a Powerwall has 13.5 kilowatt hours. So if you figure they up it to 15 kilowatt hours, it's $600 for the cells in a Powerwall. Add $400 for the hardware of the Powerwall, and you're at $1,000. They're currently selling Powerwall for $7,500. I have an order in for 3 of them to go. I'm ordered a solar roof, and I'm going to get 3 Powerwalls with it, and the Powerwalls are going to cost me $7,500 a piece. Well, that's a lot of profit for Tesla. It's not a lot of profit yet because they're not getting their costs aren't down so low, and they haven't scaled production, sales, and delivery. So right now, overhead and everything else is keeping them. They're not even necessarily making a profit on Tesla Energy yet. But when they scale and when they optimize for efficiency and when they start using iron phosphate batteries and they take all these steps, they're going to get more than 50% margin on a product like Powerwall. With Megapack, it's a 3 megawatt hour device. Well, 3 megawatt. And for people who don't understand, sorry, a key detail here. Nickel-based cells have higher energy density, both by weight and by volume. So the same amount of kilowatt hours in a lithium iron phosphate cell might be this big. I'm just using this for, I don't mean that the cell is actually this big. I'm just saying this is the size of let's say a kilowatt hour of lithium iron phosphate. And with nickel, it's much smaller. It's actually less than half. The volumetric energy density is more than twice as big with nickel. So they take up a lot less space. The iron phosphate devices take up a lot more space. But when you're doing Megapack, you don't care. When you're doing Powerwall, in most situations, you don't care. If you're talking about somebody who lives in a tiny home or a tiny apartment, maybe it matters. Like, I have a 3-car garage. We don't use the third garage. We have a lot of room in my garage. If I put 4 big Powerwalls in there, 3 big Power, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't notice the problem. So I think a lot of storage devices will go to iron phosphate because it saves money. It's also got a better cycle life than nickel-based chemistries. That means it has a longer life. And you can charge it to full without a problem. With nickel-based chemistries, when you charge to full, you degrade the life of the battery. With iron phosphate, you can charge to full, so you actually get more. Even if it has less capacity, you get more of the capacity. So anyway, with Megapack at $40 a kilowatt hour, a 3 megawatt hour Megapack would be $120,000 in battery cells. And then there's extra hardware. Figure the extra hardware is $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. you're well under $150,000. They sell for like $750,000 to $900,000. So again, you have massive profits on a per unit basis once they scale production. And when do they scale production? When battery production scales. And when is battery production going to scale? Well, Tesla is scaling the Tesla side battery production. CATL is very clearly, if you search for CATL in the news, they are very clearly scaling their LFP, iron phosphate production. LG Chem is scaling their production, but the iron phosphate cells, I believe, are going to come primarily from CATL, a Chinese company. Contemporary Amperex something. I forget how to say the full name, but CATL. C Charlie, A Alpha, T Theodore, L Lewis. CATL is they are massively scaling growth of iron phosphate battery production. And iron phosphate does not have the same materials shortages that nickel does. There's some concerns about whether there's enough nickel to support all the batteries Tesla and others want to make. But there's, unlimited iron effectively. And there's unlimited phosphate. So you're looking at better than 50% margins for Powerwall, gross margins, not net margins, but gross margins. Better than 50% gross margins for Powerwall, better than 50% gross margins for Megapack. PowerPack is probably similar. And you take that, and I'm working on models, I'm going to be doing a video this week where I break down the profit story on the energy side. And it's just my initial spreadsheets. It's bigger than I thought. I thought, okay, energy will be a lot of Tesla's revenue, but won't be as much of its profit. All of a sudden, I'm rethinking that. And, I think energy could actually, without even getting into auto bidder. Oh, thank you, Paulus. Wouldn't it be logical to have a different form factor of Starlink Sat Falcon 9 to Starlink Sat Starship, bigger and more powerful? I don't think it matters for the purposes of launch. I think that there will be next generation Starlink satellites that will be not necessarily bigger, but more powerful. I'm not sure size matters. But thank you for your support and thank you for the question. So I see the margins being very high. I see the profits being very high on Tesla Energy, and I wasn't aware of that before. So when I do my next set of models, which will probably be this week, it's hard to believe that somebody who's a Super Bowl like me can say this, but I think my model is going to lead to even higher profits and even higher valuation. So that, my previous forecasts of where Tesla's going could be understated, and it could be worth even more than I thought. That Tesla vehicles are going to produce, trillions, literally hundreds of billions in profit, and energy is also going to produce literally hundreds of billions in profit, and you're looking at an outrageous, and that's not even getting into robo-taxi's different. Robo-taxi's going to be more valuable, but it could be just the potential here is insane, and that doesn't get into things like Dojo as a service. If Tesla offers AI training through the Dojo platform, once they're done with vehicles, once they're done with self-driving, that could be another huge chunk of revenue. So much potential in Tesla, it's crazy. So Henry says you can book revenue on an energy storage deal earlier than when you deliver. Okay, I'm not too worried about timing. I'm worried about, overall the business case, how much money it generates. Okay, and a number of people are mentioning that the storm in Texas is going to encourage a lot more people to buy Powerwalls. There's no shortage of demand for Powerwall. The shortage is batteries. Tesla needs to produce more batteries. CATL needs to produce more batteries. LG Chem, Panasonic. We need more batteries. Once we produce more batteries, we can make more Powerwalls. The demand is already there. The demand is there. People want it. I want it, but the devices aren't available yet. So CM is asking when, what do I mean about Robotaxi? I checked my videos about Robotaxi, and I don't think it matters what part of the world. Robotaxis will be everywhere eventually. Okay, so moving on. The other big topic I wanted to talk about before we get, we'll deal with questions in a little later on, but moving on to the transition topic, which I think this is something I think is really, really interesting. So I mentioned earlier that the Model Y no longer has a standard range model available. Why is that? Some people are saying, well, it didn't have more than 250 miles of range. Elon didn't like that. I'm guessing not a lot of people were buying standard range. So here's the thing I'm confused about. And I made a video where I talked about this. Not that many people watched this video. It was about the transition. Tesla is managing They have to manage Tesla through a period of incredibly rapid innovation. If you think about a typical car company, like I have a Volkswagen Passat with a four-cylinder engine that's a 2-liter turbo. It's a 2018 model. In 2002, I had an Audi A4 that had basically the same engine, but they'd just taken a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of engineering and optimized the hell out of that engine. They've gotten a lot more out of it. So I now have a 5-speed automatic transmission, and I get probably 10 miles per gallon better gas mileage in my Passat. I don't have all-wheel drive, so that probably helps, but I get dramatically better gas mileage in a larger vehicle, more space inside, from basically the same engine that has just been optimized relentlessly. But what that means is every year there's a slight improvement in the engine. And what we're about to see, like the jump from the Model 3 to the Model Y was a pretty big jump. The Model Y is a significantly better vehicle than the Model 3. You have the rear casting, you have more space inside, you have the heat pump, and those changes are filtering back into Model 3 to some extent, but they haven't all yet. But we're about to see a bigger jump. In Texas and Berlin, we're going to see a Model Y that is dramatically better than the current Model Y. It's going to have front and rear castings. It's going to have structural battery pack. My guess is it's going to weigh 500 pounds less than the current Model Y being produced in Fremont and Shanghai. My guess is it's going to cost less to manufacture. So think about this challenge if you are Tesla. We're making this vehicle in Fremont, and it costs us, I'm going to make up the number, it costs us $40,000 to make it, and we sell it for $45,000. We make $5,000 in profit on it. We've got this new vehicle that's way better, and it costs us $30,000 to make it. But we can't sell it for $40,000 because we'll be undercutting the other vehicle that's not as good that we're charging more for. And for people who don't know my background, I was a PhD. I majored in mathematical economics at Rice University, and I was a PhD student at Stanford Business School for 3 years. And I graded MBA papers at one of the top business schools in the world. I was grading MBA papers. I was reviewing their case studies. So I know a little bit about an MBA education. And then one of the key things in an MBA education is this concept called a case study. And I don't know if there's ever been a case study of managing this kind of transition with this degree of rapid innovation. You know, just think about this. By the end of this year, probably by the third quarter of this year, Berlin and Texas will be spitting out Model Ys that are dramatically better, 500 pounds lighter, lower polar moment of inertia. The vehicle's going to turn better. It's designed, the way it's designed, it's going to turn better. It's going to be safer because the batteries are more towards the interior of the vehicle. So many advantages to this vehicle compared to the current generation Model Y. How do you sell both at the same time? Well, you don't. Well, you do, because the Texas version is going to have to scale. They have to ramp up production. They won't be producing them in high volume right away. So you have this period of time where you're making the Model Y in Texas and you're making, $1,000 a month, where you're making $5,000 a month in Fremont. At some point, how do you price the one that costs you more to make, but you're making it higher volume? And how do you price the newer one that costs you less to make, but is more valuable? It's just a huge problem. I've never seen somebody try to manage that problem before. So I was wondering if the vanishing standard range Model Y was a step towards this transition, or if that's totally unrelated. I don't know. What do you do with... So then after the new Model Y, the next set of factories, Elon talked about this with Sandy Munro, there's going to be a new gen... If you paid careful attention to Elon's conversation with Sandy Munro, there was this point where Elon was sort of talking about there's going to be a next generation of factory, right? It's all about the machine that builds the machine. So the machine that builds the machine in Berlin and Texas is the current new generation machine. But the machine that's going to build the 2023 Tesla Compact, everyone's calling it the Model 2. I don't know why. Elon said we're not calling it the Model 2, but everyone's calling it that. I call it the Tesla 2023 Compact. I think it's going to be compact. That's going to be the next generation vehicle. That's going to be a single frame casting, not casting front, rear, structural battery pack in the middle, but casting one piece and putting the structural battery pack in it. Eliminating a lot of robots, eliminating a lot of functions, making the vehicle much sturdier, stronger, rigid. A lot of benefits to this thing. And that next generation factory that's going to make this vehicle is going to have an even larger gigapress. Probably, it's possible that the Cybertruck gigapress is going to be big enough for this 2023 compact. So in 2023, which is not very far from now, right? Because the transition problem I'm talking about with Model Y and Model 3 relates to this. This transition problem takes us to the end of 2021. So in 2022, they're probably going to start building this next generation factory. And then in 2023, they come out with a vehicle that is probably so good that you have to stop making the Model 3. And maybe you make an SUV version and you stop making the Model Y. Maybe there might be an SUV variant of this, and it's sort of like, well, we don't know what that vehicle is going to be, but it may be so good both in cost to produce and value to the customer that it no longer make sense to make the Model 3. So the Model 3 is a part of this transition. Like, I sort of wonder, does it make sense to keep making Model 3s now? Like, are they going to, I believe they're putting a Model 3 line in Texas. Like, why? Is there enough demand for Model 3 given that Model Y is so good? So there's a lot of transitions going on. Then there's another transition issue, which is Panasonic is making something like 35 gigawatt hours of 2170 and 18650 cells in Nevada. Tesla is transitioning to the 4680 cell. The 4680 cell is going to be, as far as I can tell, the cell for everything within 3 or 4 years. Well, what do you do with the 2170 and 18650 cells? 1865, I think we're calling them, not 18650, 18650, whatever. What do we do with the older generation of cells once the 4680 line starts spinning up at high speed? I mean, maybe you stick them in Powerwall because it doesn't matter. I don't know. I think that's a really, really interesting question. Bob Elvis, great question. Is there any chance that the outer body of the 25K next model will be made from non-metal material? I don't think so yet. I think that there's a future where you eliminate, there are going to be in the future, there will be places that eliminate human drivers, that only robotaxis are driving, and that they're essentially zero accidents. And at that point, you don't need a sturdy vehicle to protect you. You just need a lightweight vehicle to get you from point A to point B, and the safety issue in a crash becomes irrelevant. When that happens, maybe they use a non-metal material. I haven't heard anything about that, though. And so yeah, that I think we're pretty much close to the end of my outline. I just think there's this big question of how do you manage this? You try to put yourselves in the heads of the people who are running Tesla, Elon and the other people running Tesla. Like, at what point do you stop making the Model 3? Because the Model 3, do you revamp the Model 3 line to have front and rear castings and structural pack? Or do you just say, you know what, by the time we get done with revamping Model 3 for all that, we're going to have the compact? And do you just stop making Model 3s? I just think there's a lot of really interesting questions here that, you almost feel like we need a brainstorming session on Clubhouse or something to have this conversation, or, interview somebody who knows more about manufacturing and management to have this conversation. I think there's a lot here that's really interesting. But anyway, let's move into the Q&A. I guess I had less material than I thought. I think that's good. So we're in the Q&A. Sandy Monroe thinks it won't be zero accidents because the highway departments paint the streets wrong. He almost had an autopilot accident because there were 2 sets of lines and a ramp. Within 5 years, if not 3 years, autopilot FSD will be so good that won't happen. It won't matter where the lines are. If a UFO lands in the middle of the road, it will know how to handle it. Maybe these issues won't be so important in the future when Tesla starts keeping the cars for themselves for the robotaxi fleet. Yeah, I mean, I think Tesla, my vision of Tesla is they stop selling cars. Thank you, Emma, for your comment, and for your membership. And thank you, Jim, as well. I think that it doesn't make sense for Tesla to sell cars to people once the robotaxi network goes live. It makes sense for Tesla to run the robotaxis themselves. I have a video where I talk about that. It's Will Tesla Stop Selling Cars? Check it out. How's the Cyber Doghouse going? Great question. I believe this afternoon we are gonna cut the wood to make a door. I also got I have a client who brought me some cork material that will help with sound insulation. I think we're gonna put the cork on the outside because it's gonna look better than the crappy plywood we made it from. And then we're gonna put sound absorbing panels on the inside. And I researched how much the fan will cost to operate. I don't have a picture of it. I have like a 3-inch computer fan. And I was worried if how am I going to know to turn it on when the dog goes in the doghouse? And apparently the answer is you just leave it running 24/7. And it will only use about $4 of electricity a year. So that's a trivial expense. So I will, and it has like something like a 10-year, it'll run for like 10 years. So that's probably what's going to happen. I don't, Mr. Sam asks about my price targets. I don't use the word price target. And I have a lot of different models with a lot of different ballpark guesses for what the stock price will be in 2025, 2030, whatever. And I'm constantly updating it, and I'm working on a new model. So I wouldn't, but price target has a particularly meaning for Wall Street analysts that doesn't fit what I'm doing. Aaron, I think my wife probably gets tired of hearing me talk about Tesla, but then I show her the brokerage account. We have a lot of Tesla stock. Our brokerage, our IRA went up like 4x this year, something like that. It's crazy. We had other stocks, and they've now become relatively small in our portfolio. And of course, I went and bought more. How much money will Tesla owners with FSD generate through robotaxi? Great question, Nick. So my take on it is that Tesla will probably keep 30% of the revenue when you're running your vehicle as a robotaxi. It depends how much you use your vehicle as a robotaxi. So for me, like I'm going to buy a Cybertruck and I'm probably going to run it as a robotaxi. I don't go out much, so I'll probably run it as a robotaxi, 8 hours, 10 hours a day. So let's say it does 100 miles, just to pick a simple number. Let's say your robotaxi does 100 miles a day, and let's say it earns $1 a mile in revenue. I'm saying 100 miles occupied. 100 miles when somebody's in it paying. It's probably going to do more miles than that, but roughly 60% of the miles will be occupied, 40% will be unoccupied. So I'm just picking 100 miles. So you make $1 a mile. It's actually running 160 miles, let's say, in that time. And if you have an updated Model 3, like a recent Model 3 or Model Y, your cost per mile is probably approaching 10 cents a mile. So it costs you $16 for the day to run the vehicle, including depreciation and maintenance and electricity, and charging it at home probably. And you got $100 in revenue total. So Tesla takes 30, so you get 70 minus 16, you get $54 a day in profit from that vehicle. Perhaps Tesla will start keeping the older version of the Y for the robotaxi fleet until it phases out. So I used to think that, Eric. And I've come to the opinion that it really comes down to the cost of operating the vehicle. And the new vehicle that's going to be produced in 2023, I think, so the Model Y is probably 10 cents a mile, cost of operating it, when you include depreciation and everything. The new vehicle that's coming out in 2023 is going to cost 5 cents a mile or less. So when you're looking at running that thing for 10 years, saving a nickel a mile and 1,000,000 miles, saving a nickel a mile saves you $50,000. So does it still make sense to use older Model Ys for robotaxi? It probably does. The performance characteristics are nowhere near as important in a robotaxi application because you don't want your vehicle accelerating hard. You don't want your vehicle cornering hard. You don't want your vehicle braking hard when you're in a robotaxi, when you're a passenger. When you're driving, you might like those performance characteristics, but as a passenger, you don't care. So maybe there's a way of reconfiguring Model Y to reduce the cost per mile, and the current generation Model Y, maybe that would work. I don't know anything about Model Y right-hand drive. I think right-hand drive becomes irrelevant with robotaxi, by the way. Once you have robotaxis, that doesn't matter anymore. Boring Company's going to change infrastructure. So progress on Boring Fund. Thank you for asking, Hassan. So if you're not on my email list, I would suggest signing up. There's a link in the description below to the email list for investing. I know at some point I have to be more careful in what I say. All I will say is I'm talking to people on the email list. I've talked to lawyers. I've talked to a company that would help set up the fund. If I'm able to do this, I'm really waiting to verify that I have enough investors who are serious, committed, and have enough money to make this make sense. And once I'm confident of that, then I'm going to fund. And I think it's going to take a month or two to get to the point where I get to say, okay, I'm ready to form the fund. It's called fund formation, and fund formation is probably going to take at least 2 months. So it's probably 4 months before I have a document to hand to a prospective investor to say, here's how it goes. That's my ballpark. Warren, Bob Tag, thank you for your membership. Bob asks, Warren, can you interview with auto expert Sandy Monroe? I don't think Sandy Monroe would take time to interview. If you know Sandy Monroe and you can invite him to say, Warren would love to interview you, yes, I would love to interview him. I think if I said, hey, Sandy, I'd love to interview you, I'm likely to get a non-answer. I'd love to interview Elon Musk. If anybody can get Elon Musk to interview with me, I would love to do it. What was this question up here? Do you see Starlink picking up most of the world's rural internet customers in the next 10 years? I see Starlink picking up a large share of rural internet customers in wealthy countries. I'm not sure how it's going to play in poor countries. I think there's an argument to be made that Tesla would charge less in poor countries because the satellite isn't doing anything when it's over a poor country, and it might make sense to charge less in poor countries so that you can still generate some revenue from the satellite sitting over, flying over there. But I'm not sure how that's going to work. Yeah, Jim, it totally makes sense to. So, like for me personally, I ordered a Cybertruck because I think a Cybertruck might get a higher rate because it's more useful. It can carry more passengers. It can carry cargo. I think a Cybertruck is probably going to be used as a robotaxi more for Home Depot trips, or carrying 6 kids to college with all their stuff in the back. I think there's a lot of use applications for, I think most robotaxi rides will be single passengers in a small efficient vehicle, and I really think the future is pod cars with single passengers that only make sense when human drivers are off the road because they won't be as crash worthy as, say, the new compact that's going to come out in 2023 or the Model 3, Model Y, which are very crash worthy. So question, is SpaceX actually part of the Tesla company? Flat no. Elon is, I believe, a majority owner of SpaceX and a controlling shareholder of Tesla, but they are not the same company. Buffett buys Chevron. I don't have a problem with Warren Buffett buying Chevron. I think that fits with him. I think we're going to need oil companies for a long time to come. And Warren Buffett's history is he sees an opportunity to buy a company like that and change their operations and make them more efficient. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Anybody who has suggestions for people I should interview, I'm very open to interviewing famous people. That's going to be good for the channel. It's going to be an interesting thing. Sandy Monroe, Elon Musk, whoever if you have contact with somebody like that, tell them I want to interview them and I would love to have them on. The fund you're talking about, is this referring to SpaceX, John Smith? The fund I've been talking about is about Boring Company and Neuralink and possibly SpaceX, but probably not. SpaceX just did a funding round at 800. If everything goes right, we will have a fund that will have maybe $25 million in it. SpaceX just did a funding round at $850 million. Our fund would not be big enough to play a significant role in a funding round like that. Boring Company and Neuralink are smaller and will have smaller funding rounds, and there should be better opportunities there. I can't put odds on Boring Fund happening. I think it's likely because I'm like Elon. I'm like really optimistic that something's going to happen soon, and then of course it takes longer and maybe it never happens. What do I think about Lucid going public? You seriously going to ask me that? I have 3 videos on my channel where I talk about Lucid. I think it's insane. I think they're talking now about a $15 billion valuation for a company that's never made a car. That is promising to make a car that has never made a car and claims it's going to make a car that's better than a Tesla Model S. What about Mobileye? Tesla competition. I don't know enough about Mobileye. I suspect that Mobileye is nowhere close to where Tesla is. I don't think it's going to happen. Flash Royale asks, do I think Tesla should make a model home showing what it would take to be totally self-sustainable? I have a video on my channel where I talk about Tesla making homes. I think Tesla should get into the business of making homes. I don't think Elon has time for that to be something that Tesla does. I think successful Tesla investors like me and others should get together and talk about business ideas like that. And I know that some successful Tesla investors have been talking about making Tesla-oriented homes with solar roof, with HVAC, with Powerwall. I think there's a lot. And, can we come up with, can we re-engineer how a house is built? Tesla is re-engineering how to build a car. Tesla is re-engineering how to build, the grid. SpaceX has re-engineered how to build rockets. Can we learn from Elon? Can we be like Elon? I think I need to make a t-shirt that says be like Elon. Can we be like Elon and think about what we can do? What opportunities are there in the world to do something better than's being done now? So I think in the meat space, Impossible Foods, Beyond Meats, Memphis Meats, there's all these companies that have innovative ideas to redo entirely the meat industry. And I think that's great. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. That's going to be over my head. I think my doghouse project is kind of a small project. It's not going to be big enough. I'm pursuing it. I might be able to make life happier for, hundreds of thousands of dogs and their owners, maybe. But housing, I think, is a huge opportunity for us to figure out, can we do the concrete better? Can we do the construction better? Can we do it so it's built quicker? Can we do it so it's more energy efficient? Can we do it so it's more affordable for home buyers? A lot of opportunities there. I would love if somebody has an idea, and I've gotten contacted a couple times. I've been contacted a couple times by people who have ideas along that way, and I did not find them. I'm not sure they were as credible, or I'm not sure they were pursuing, the credible is not the right word. I'm not sure they were pursuing it in the same way that I have the vision for, which is, let's re-envision the whole process of making a home. That's what, first principle, let's apply first principles to home building. How could we do this better to make a better, stronger, safer, less expensive, more cost efficient, more energy efficient home that could house a lot of people? So I would love to get together with other successful Tesla investors to look at how do we do that. Sorry, I got really excited I'm really excited about that topic, by the way. I have a video about it. I'm really excited about that. I think there's real potential for us to make a real difference in the world, to reduce, accelerate the transition to sustainable energy and improve life for the average Joe. Nick Garden, yes, I did see Lex Friedman's interview with Jim Keller. I didn't watch the entire thing. I did watch the part about Tesla AI. I did talk about data. I think Jim Keller is absolutely brilliant. I actually clipped about 4 minutes of that video and sent it to my children, who of course did not watch it. I put it up as an unlisted video on YouTube and sent them a link to the YouTube video, and of course neither of my kids watched the video. Because anything Dad thinks you should watch, you should not watch. I think, what if, could you build a home out of steel? Right? Somebody says cast walls for homes is totally, could you do a steel home? With 3 millimeter thick steel. Is that a good choice? I don't know. I think there's a lot of potential there. So Jim mentions, Jim Whitehead mentions 3D printed house of concrete. I have seen some, I've seen some experience with that. Elon said, somebody asked him about 3D printing, I think, cars. And Elon said that it's really, that they use 3D printing at SpaceX and Tesla for certain things, but it's really hard to do it at scale. That 3D printing does not scale. I see a lot of people have mentioned it to me before. I have yet to see a credible case for 3D printing scaling, that it works at scale. Thoughts on Bill Gates? I don't know if people saw it on Twitter, but I put up a video. Bill Gates was asked if he had shorted Tesla, and he said, I'm not going to talk about my investments, 3 days after he did a 60 Minutes video talking about all his green investments. And he looked away from the camera, and he hemmed and hawed. It was very clear that Bill Gates shorted Tesla, at least at some point. He claims to be this Mr. Green, and then he's shorting Tesla. Awful. I don't know that he shorted Tesla, but I think he shorted Tesla. How will Tesla scale robotaxi charging infrastructure for robotaxis they own? Can you do a video on this? So, Daryl, that's a great question. I've been asked that before. As I see it, wherever they have a charging station, they put more chargers in. Wherever they have a charging station, the robotaxis are... Here's my picture of how robotaxis are going to run, and I don't know if I made this video yet. I have this idea for making a video a day in the life of a robotaxi. But the short idea is roughly 6 a.m., people start waking up and going to work. And the robotaxis know where they're supposed to be, and they're positioned where the rides are going to be in the morning, and they start taking people to work. And they drive and they take people on rides until sometime in the early afternoon. In my vision, the typical robotaxi only has a 200-mile range. It doesn't need more than that because it does about 160 to 180 miles in the morning. It takes about a half hour to charge up in the middle of the day, and then it does another round of driving until about midnight, and then it goes to a charging station again to recharge. And in that middle of the day, the software optimizes and staggers. All right, this car comes in this time, this car comes in this time. And the reason you want to go to 200 kilowatt hour battery, 200 mile range in a vehicle is it means you can use batteries. You're able to have more vehicles, and the charging time ends up being a fairly small percentage of the day. Yeah, Paulus, I'd love to interview Tim Dodd. Please let him know I'd love to interview him. I'm going to say the odds of Tim Dodd agreeing to interview with me are very, very small. Look, I want to interview Elon. I would do the best interview of Elon you've ever seen. I watched it, like Joe Rogan's interview of Elon was terrible. The Sandy Monroe conversation was okay. It was pretty good. I really liked it, but I've got a bunch of questions to ask Elon. Somebody knows Elon, tell him I want to interview him. And good luck. I don't think Elon's going to come on my channel either. Andre Karpathy, I would love to interview. There's a lot of people I would love to interview. But I'm little old Warren with 40,000 subscribers or 42,000 subscribers. I'm not famous. I would love it if Elon would agree to be interviewed. Or Steve Jurvetson. I would love to interview Steve Jurvetson. There's lots of people I would love to interview. Jim Keller. So getting back to that question though. So CJ asks, who cleans robotaxis? So you have these charging stations that the robotaxis are going to come into, and they're going to be robo chargers, and they're going to plug in. The vehicle's going to be sitting for 30 minutes. So you have staff walking around checking the vehicles out. Vehicle pulls in, staff member walks around, cleans it up if it needs to be cleaned, takes notes if there's any damage. And at some point maybe it's robotic, but for the foreseeable future, you just have people who work for Tesla who walk around making sure everything is in good shape. And if something's not in good shape, they take it off the road and they get it checked out by a service center. I don't think that's really complicated. I think that's actually a fairly easy thing to scale up. Wherever you have superchargers, you just add more chargers and you add staff. Yeah, Gates will say positive things about Elon, but it's obvious he doesn't like him. It's so obvious that Gates doesn't like Elon. Will the ride be cheaper in Robotaxi if you carpool? I would think so, yeah. I don't know how much that's going to happen in the long run. So this is a great question. I don't know how to pronounce the name. It's Hervoji Dopar, and I'm sure I got that pronunciation wrong. So I see a future of two major kinds of Robotaxi ride. There's going to be the single passenger or very small vehicle that's designed to take one person. Maybe it could take more than one person, but it's primarily designed for one person. And that's going to be 80% of Robotaxi rides are going to be one person going from point A to point B in the rich world. And then there's going to be a subset of rides where it's going to be a minibus that's going to hold 20 passengers. And the advantage of the minibus is the cost per mile of operating the minibus gets down below a penny a mile, below 1 American cent, 1/100th of an American dollar. And the cost for the passenger to ride will be 2-3 cents a mile, maybe a nickel a mile, 5 cents a mile. So a 100-mile trip will cost $5 or less. And that just it becomes so efficient to have that large. So the room for ride sharing where like 3 or 4 people, what's the word for it? Pooling, Uber pool and things like that. That's a very small window. It's not a big chunk of Uber's rides, our Uber pool. It's not very efficient. It doesn't add a lot of efficiency. How about Dave Lee to have what? Went up too fast. I would love to interview Dave Lee. I would love to be interviewed by Dave Lee. I don't think Dave Lee is interested in it. I've tagged Dave Lee. It's funny. People ask me about this all the time. Warren, why don't you interview this person? Elon has replied to my tweets twice. Steve Jurvetson has liked my tweets. I have never seen Dave Lee I'm not saying he hasn't liked a tweet, but I have never seen Dave Lee reply to one of them. I think I actually searched to see if Dave Lee had ever replied to me or sent a tweet to me, and he never has. So I love Dave Lee's channel. I think he does great interviews. I don't agree with him on everything, and I think I really appreciate the support of my audience. I want you to know something that you may not be aware of. There are people who don't like me. I rub some people the wrong way. There's this Clubhouse app, and there's a lot of Tesla conversations going on, and I was in this Clubhouse app yesterday, day before yesterday, and somebody was criticizing me. A couple people are criticizing me in different ways, and like, look, I am who I am. I'm rough around the edges. I always have been. It's not new. I'm not sensitive about it. I know I offend people sometimes, and I'm not sorry. But I don't think my hunch is that Dave Lee either thinks I'm beneath him, which is probably true. I have a much smaller channel than he does, or he doesn't like me. But if you know Dave Lee and he would like to interview me, or he would like to be interviewed on my channel, I would love to talk to the guy. I think he's great. I am a fan of his. I'm a fan of Gali from Hyperchange. I don't think Gali's ever replied to me. I think he's brilliant. I don't agree with these guys on everything, and the fact that I'm willing to say I disagree with somebody on something, I think burns people. I don't know why people are so sensitive, but it's okay. We're all wrong. We're trying to be less wrong. That means sometimes we're going to disagree on something. Wouldn't the robotaxi know that it needs service, so it would just drive itself to a Tesla service center? I suppose in some situations that's true, but not always. What do I think about the Lucid Air finally coming out? When it finally comes out, we'll see. So far, it hasn't come out. Yes, I think it might be. I think it's probably a fraud, but I don't have good information to say that authoritatively. I don't remember the Starlink dispute with Dave Lee. What did I say? Night Trekker. What did I say about Starlink with Dave Lee? I don't remember that. I remember I criticized him about something, but I don't remember what it was. I was on that Clubhouse when you got questioned like that. Those guys were idiots. So yeah, what happened on Clubhouse was we're talking and somebody was, because I do all these videos and just let's talk about this for a second. I make these videos, I make my projections, and somebody said, you know, Warren's not really qualified to talk about this stuff. And that's probably true, right? I'm not an engineer. I don't program AI. I'm not a rocket scientist. You know, I'm not any of those things. I'm a fan. Okay. Now, with that said, I have an ego and I think I am qualified to do what I'm doing. So just so you know, I have a bachelor's degree in mathematical economics from Rice University, which is an elite university. I was a National Merit Scholar. I got a really high SAT score. I got a really high LSAT score. I went to Stanford Business School's PhD program and I studied at the PhD level and I graded MBA papers in all kinds of topics. As a PhD student, it's really hard to get into, just so you know, it's really, really hard to get into the Stanford Business School PhD program. Okay? We're not talking like it's not your local community college. This is one of the hardest programs to get into the world, and I got in. And I was there for 3 years, and it wasn't for me, and I left and I went to law school. Shame, 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 I went to law school. Now I'm a lawyer. I've handled 4,000 plus traffic tickets. I've handled hundreds of personal injury cases, many car accident cases. I'm very, and many drunk driving cases. I'm very passionate about how we can make the roads safer because I've seen people die. In fact, if you're following me on Twitter, you don't know about this. A girl that I knew, didn't know her well, a girl who danced with my daughter in middle school, and I videoed their dance class dancing more than once. Beautiful dancer, wonderful girl, was crossing a crosswalk near Daytona Beach and was killed by a human driver. And it's sort of like, it's personal now. I'm very, very passionate that I want our roads to be safer. I'm very, very passionate that I want to get rid of human drivers as soon as we can because robo-taxis will be safer. So I have a background that I think qualifies me in a lot of different ways. And particularly for what I do on this channel, mostly when I do my models and I talk about Tesla stock prices, I've been doing mathematical models. I've been doing mathematical models since college. Okay, I did mathematical models in college. I took a class specifically in mathematical modeling. And when I was at Stanford in the PhD program, working for a faculty member, I was doing Monte Carlo simulations of various things. And no, I'm not an AI programmer, but I've been writing code since the mid 1970s on a Commodore 4K PET. I still occasionally, not in the last year or two, but I have occasionally had to write code, PHP code. I took a class in Python not that long ago. I know something about computer code. I can install my own computer hardware if I need to. I've installed modems. I've installed hard drives. So I'm a technical guy. I didn't drop out of Stanford, by the way. I got a master's degree in political science while I was there. So sorry for that rant, but I would say this, I agree that I'm not qualified to judge when full self-driving will be ready. I don't know who is. I'm qualified to ask questions about it. I'm qualified to have some kind of opinion about it. And I'm qualified to evaluate. I've been managing investments, and I currently manage over $2 million of funds. Significantly more than $2 million in funds. And I've been managing investments for myself and family for more than 20 years. So I think I've been managing and choosing individual stocks. I've had some successes. I've had some failures. Funny little bit. Once I invested $5,000 in a company called Seadrill, which was for like offshore oil drilling. I was investing in it because I wanted to have a dividend stock. At that time, I was interested in, just having a little bit of balance in the portfolio. Let's get a dividend stock. And they had great dividends. Like a week or two later, they basically went under. They didn't go bankrupt, but they collapsed. And the stock, I invested $5,000. I probably lost $4,900 or something like that. And you would think that's got to be your worst investing story. No, my worst investing story is I bought Amazon in 2013 and it 12x'd. Wait a minute, Warren, why is buying Amazon and it 12x'ing your worst investing story? Because I didn't buy more. I think I bought $5,000 in Amazon stock, right? I bought $5,000 in one company. If I had bought 5,000 more of Amazon, I would have made $60,000 more. I lost $60,000 by not buying more Amazon. I was This is one of those things about conviction investing. When you believe in something, go in, invest more. So I lost 5,000 by investing in Seadrill. I lost 60,000 by not investing $5,000 more in Amazon. So I have a lot of experience in investing. I have a lot of experience in mathematical modeling. I drive cars. I'm a car geek. I read Car and Driver and Road and Track, Motor Trend over the years. So let's see. Yeah, so Barney says, I'm too optimistic on Tesla, even more so than David Lee. So let's be clear. My models aren't perfect. I do my best to take the information we have, and the key information most of you know is how many batteries are they going to make in 2022? Very clear signal from Tesla. We're going to make 100 gigawatt hours of batteries in 2022. Somewhat clear signal from Tesla. That 100 gigawatt hours will be supplemental to batteries from our suppliers. I hear that and say the suppliers are going to produce more. They're going to sell Tesla more than 100 gigawatt hours of batteries. So call it 250 gigawatt hours of batteries. Call it 200 gigawatt hours of batteries. Okay, how much revenue does that produce? It's about $600 a kilowatt hour. You run the numbers. You're talking about $120 to $150 billion revenue, roughly 4x where Tesla was in 2020. 4x growth in 2 years is pretty damn good. So that's not complicated. That's just really simple analysis. And, you can get in more depth and you can say, okay, what are the taxes and what are the interest and, what are the other things? But that's a plain and simple thing. The company's going to be 4 times as big in 2 years. And really, we're pretty confident that they're going to be more profitable that they're going to make more profits per revenue. Their margins are going to be better in 2 years than they are now because they're going to be making their own batteries that are going to cost them less money because they're having factories on the individual continents. So the deliveries are easier. There's less cost in that. So, all right, Dave Elliott, update us on your thoughts on Tesla key metrics for FSD. Well, okay. So in Clubhouse, this is a question I don't have the answer to. It's a great question, Dave. Thank you for asking that. We know that when we're talking about full self-driving, one of the common things that Tesla talks about is they look for, and Elon even recently has talked about this, is how many interventions are there? In other words, there's a human at the steering wheel, holding the wheel, making sure the car's okay. If the human thinks that the car's doing something wrong, the human intervenes, grabs the steering wheel harder, hits the brake, steps on the gas, does something to intervene and take over control of the car. That's an intervention, that's a disengagement, whatever you want to call it. And generally speaking, those are bad. You want fewer interventions. Now, here's the problem. At some point, the human's wrong. At some point, the human intervention is more likely to be wrong than the car's decision to do what it's doing. And as Elon says, all input is error, I think is the term. That when FSD gets good enough, human input would be error, and you don't want the humans to interfere. So, for example, the car starts steering to the left, and the owner freaks out and steers it back to the right. The car saw something coming from the right that the owner couldn't see. When it gets good enough, it does something you don't expect. It probably did it for a reason. So the question I have is, how does Tesla measure internally how well FSD is doing? What are the internal metrics? What do they look for? So I think one of the things that we talked about in Clubhouse that made a lot of sense to me, and they've talked about this before, is they know who the best drivers are. So, and what the software is doing is it's predicting, FSD is predicting, let's say the human driver is just driving. It's predicting what the human driver is going to do next. And it's predicting what all the objects in the scene are going to do next. So we're at, this time, it makes a prediction what's going to happen in the next half second. Where's everything going to be? Where's the human going to go? And if everything lines up really, really close to where it predicted, then it's doing well. If something is out of order from what its prediction was, then something's wrong. So how do you measure that? I don't know how you measure that. And what else would you measure? Somebody said, well, you measure crashes. There aren't enough crashes for that to be a valuable measurement. You need more measurements. So how does Tesla know when FSD is good enough? How do you measure that? How do you know whether it has improved from the last iteration of the software? They have to have internal metrics, and I don't think anyone knows what they are. I think Elon knows what they are. Karpathy knows what they are. There's probably 50 people inside Tesla who know what they are, but the rest of us don't know what those internal metrics are. And I'd be really interested to know what they are. 50% of newly sold normal bicycles, and okay, let's see. I'm just looking at the questions. Dave Lee bores me, and Golly's hand waving, etc., bothers me. I love Golly. Dave Lee sometimes bores me. I think he does really good jobs with his interviews. Will FSD be able to see beyond one or two cars like radar? I believe it already is able to predict where. This is one of the things. There was an interview. Who interviewed James Doma? Was that Dave Lee? Somebody just interviewed James Doma, who's an AI guy. It might have been Dave Lee. I forget who it was. And what it's doing is when something, I think it was in an interview, when an object moves out of the vehicle's view, it gets obscured by an obstruction, the software is predicting where that object is moving, and when it gets past the obstruction, it sees where it is, and if the prediction is correct consistently, then it starts figuring out where things are going to be when it can't even see them, which is what we do, right? That's the goal, right? Is to figure out how to do it without falling asleep, without using drugs, without getting drunk, without getting distracted. Ron Barron said buying Tesla today with a 2030 time horizon is like buying a PE of 10. I'm not sure I fully understand what that means, but I like how it sounds. I don't think that. So, this is another thing. Jamie AC says this. Compact can start in 2022. So I think there's two things going on that people are confusing. I think Tesla may come out with a variation on the Model 3 in China, like a hatchback, that will be produced in China soon. There's a rumor that that's going to happen. I don't think that's the 2023 Tesla Compact they talked about at Battery Day. The 2023 Compact they talked about at Battery Day is going to require a whole new factory or factories. It's going to require whole new production methods. It's going to require maybe even bigger gigacasting machines. If you missed it, Cybertruck is going to have the Model Y has a 6,000-ton gigacasting machine. Cybertruck is going to have an 8,000-ton gigacasting machine. I'm undecided whether the 2023 Compact will be able to use the same type of 8,000-ton gigacasting machine or whether it will use a larger one. So I think that's coming. But I think those are two different things. And the talk about there's going to be some new version of the Model 3, that's not the Compact. Shouldn't Tesla create a car-to-car communication protocol? I'm not sure that's necessary. It probably happened at some point, but I don't know what value that adds, Arnaud. Ahmad? I don't know what that adds. Warren, hold a clubhouse room where people can pitch you their public investment idea. Henry, tell me more what you mean by that. What do you mean by where people can pitch you their public investment idea? You mean like a startup idea for homes or something like that? Or are you talking about something else? Oh, Stephen, I didn't say a few was 3. I'm careful how I say that stuff. I have more than 230,000. A few is deliberately vague. Will the new compact model be produced in India and only be robotaxi? I don't think there will be India. I could be wrong. I don't think there will be India production of vehicles anytime soon, but I could be wrong. Am I out of focus? I'm looking at the screen. I feel like I'm a little out of focus. Warren, would you sell Amazon's shares right now at 100% profit to buy more Tesla? No. I did sell Amazon shares in 2018 or 2019 because I was rebalancing my portfolio. I sold half my Amazon stock, and then I ended up investing about 2/3 of that in Tesla stock, but I didn't connect the two dots. It was just I sold my Amazon stock because I want to rebalance, and then later I said, I need to invest this cash, and I bought more Tesla stock. So for a while, I felt bad selling my Amazon stock because it went up like 2x from where I sold it. But the Tesla stock I bought 5x from, it's probably a while ago. It's probably more than 5x now. The Tesla stock more than 5x. So I actually made money on that unintentionally. One of the beautiful things about investing is sometimes you make money by accident. I have 0.846 Bitcoin, which I meant to sell and I never got around to selling it. I meant to, sell it for cash and have some extra cash, and it was probably worth like $5,000 at the time. And now it's worth like $50,000. So I made like $45,000 by accident. Hopefully I don't lose money by accident. If it's a smaller vehicle, wouldn't it require a smaller casting machine to make a smaller part? Aaron, no. So the 6,000 ton giga casting machine at Fremont, and that's going into Berlin and Texas, casts the front section and or the rear section of the Model Y. It doesn't cast the whole vehicle. The 8,000 ton giga casting machine is casting the rear substructure, I believe, of the Cybertruck. That might be big enough that it would be the same. It would be big enough to cast the compact, but the 6,000 ton ones that are casting Model Y and the front and rear, that's only a third of the vehicle. So no, that wouldn't be big enough, I don't think. Thoughts on OEMs licensing FSD from Tesla and when this could happen would be a great revenue stream. OEMs would need to have the camera setup that Tesla has, the radars, the sonars, all the features. They would have to have the FSD hardware. It's not just software. And then the OEMs would imagine this: you're Ford, and Tesla says, "Sure, we're happy to license you this year. You have to pay us this much money, and you have to go put Tesla inside on the car, just like Intel had said you had to put Intel inside on your computer." Is Ford going to want to put Tesla inside on their cars? I think there's a challenge. Yes, Ferdinand, exactly. I think there's a challenge of a lot of business opportunities people talk about. Like people say Tesla should make deals with home builders to put solar roof on their homes. It's more complicated than that. I don't think it's as simple as you think, and I don't think it's necessarily that much revenue. And I think if you're the OEM, Tesla's already wrecking you. Do you want to give Tesla more money? That's a tough one. Yes, Ferdinand, that would be a good t-shirt. If Ferdinand said something about it, you don't like me? That's okay. I'm from New York. And I am from New York. So will Tesla deliver 1 million vehicles in 2021? I hate making short-term projections. I think a lot depends. I did hear my source about Tesla manufacturing said he thought that the battery cell line was 30% ahead of schedule and Model Y Texas was ahead of schedule. So if Model Y and Berlin, if Texas and Berlin are ahead of schedule, it increases the chances for 1 million vehicles in 2021. And if the battery cell lines are ahead of schedule, it increases the chances of 1 million vehicles in 2021. Anthony says, my only thing with Tesla is it's not practical for most people who have to park on the street or don't have a garage or driveway. So I guess my point there would be, number one, either you got to suck it up and pay for charging somewhere, or number two, you pay for a parking spot near where you live and you pay the company that owns the parking lot to set up a charging station or just a power outlet. You don't need necessarily a high-level power outlet like a 240-volt power outlet so you can plug in your car while it's parked in its... you park in a parking garage and you pay some money for that. How much does that cost you versus going to superchargers? That's a question I can't answer for you. Can you charge at work and then maybe you don't need to worry about charging at home? Ford will be bankrupt, Mark says. Yeah, Mark, I think all the M's might go bankrupt. They will all get bailed out by their governments, and they will go bankrupt again. Dojo Inside, yes. No, Tesla, seriously, people are laughing at Tesla Inside. Like, doesn't it make sense that if you're going to put Tesla chips inside your car, you're going to use the software, you're going to have the camera set up and everything? Wouldn't it make sense to say Tesla Inside? I think it would. Yeah, and Ford would rather be dead than red. Exactly. Ford wouldn't do it. They are making connections for streetlights. Yeah, streetlights is a way you can charge a battery electric vehicle. Tesla Inside. Maybe that is a good t-shirt. No, but so I don't use, for people who don't know this, I don't use words like Tesla and SpaceX, generally speaking, in my shirts. I believe there's a legal issue with publicity rights. So I'm careful. Like I say Elon on my shirts, but I don't say Elon Musk. I use some images. They've been pretty relaxed with images, and I usually alter the images. I'm careful about that. So I don't use the word, I have Tesla Air, which is an interesting take on Tesla. Maybe Tesla Inside would be close enough. That's potential. Warren, you should host Clubhouse answer questions from your fans. Max, I have started Clubhouse rooms and people have come on and asked questions. Maybe I should schedule something. That's an idea. Are there any updates on ARK's news analysis on Tesla? I haven't seen anything new. They had ARK Invest. For those who don't know, ARK Invest, Kathy Wood, they put out a Big Think, is it called? They had this big PDF. Thank you, Mac, for your support. They have this big, it's like a 128-page PDF or something. I downloaded it recently and I read like half of it. It's really interesting stuff. It really relates to, if you find this, ARK Invest's recent big document where they talk about big ideas or something like that. They talk about AI training, artificial intelligence training hardware and software, and that really plays into Dojo and Dojo as a service, as a potential business model for Tesla in the future. Elon inside, maybe. That could have sexual connotations. I'm not sure I like that one. Worst case scenario, recharging a Tesla like refueling as people do now. Yeah, that's true. It's like going to a gas station, but maybe you can find destinations, you can find ways of charging. I don't know. Why is Tesla not building battery factories quicker? So, John, Tesla has apparently successfully built the 10th largest battery factory in the world in a corner of a building in Fremont. There's flyovers. I forget who does the flyovers. Somebody does flyovers. So they've already built a factory. And apparently it's going really well. Everything I've heard, I think in the Q4 call, they said it was going well. This insider I talked to said it's going really well. I think we're going to see these battery lines rolled out in Austin and Berlin quickly. I think the interesting question is, will they make these battery lines in China? I think they will. I'm actually working, I have an idea in my head for a video. I haven't narrowed it down yet, but a video about Tesla Semi and what the market is for Tesla Semi. And I think the market for Tesla Semi in China is much bigger than I thought before. I think the market for Tesla Semi, if you haven't heard me say this before, you might want to sit down for this. The US and Canada market for Tesla Semi, for Semi in general, for semi-trucks in general, is about 250,000 vehicles a year. The Chinese market for that type of vehicle is over 1 million vehicles a year. China's economy, at least in that aspect, is more than 4 times the size of the US and Canada combined. For Americans who think we have the greatest country on earth, I'm not sure that's true anymore. Mark, thank you for joining the channel. What do I think about the automated bollards or barricades that detect the Tesla car to prevent icing of supercharger spaces? For those who don't know, icing means somebody parks an internal combustion engine vehicle in a Tesla supercharger space and thus deprives Tesla owners from being able to charge their vehicles. I don't know how you would do that. I don't think it's going to be I don't think that's a big long-term problem. I think that will resolve itself. Do you pull these answers out of your butt? Absolutely. Everything comes out of my butt. Maybe my ear, other orifices. Is Tesla the new Standard Oil monopoly? I actually think there's a serious issue with whether Tesla becomes perceived as a monopoly. I don't agree that it would be a monopoly. You can always get a used car and drive around. You always have alternatives. But I think there's a really strong risk that politicians will decide to define it as a monopoly and go after it. And I think Tesla management will probably take steps when they get close to that to spin off different aspects of the company in different ways so that it looks less like a monopoly. So the Robotaxi network becomes its own company. Maybe Tesla Robotaxi US becomes its own company. They spin off both by country and by product line. So Tesla Energy spins off from Tesla vehicles. I could see a lot of steps they could take to spin off aspects of the company once they become relatively mature and still work together but be separate companies, and Elon still having a controlling interest in all of these companies, unless he doesn't need to anymore. Once a company becomes something that no longer requires radical innovation, Elon might be able to step away. Johnny, I have looked into Mobileye. I just don't think there's a lot of good information on Mobileye. Mobileye might be good competition for Tesla and might not. Here's the Mobileye problem. Let me just explain something to you. Someone else comes up with a full self-driving software, hardware solution. Let's say it's Mobileye. Does Mobileye make cars? No. Does Mobileye's solution require LiDAR? As far as I know, yes. How much does a car that's going to use the Mobileye solution cost? I'm going to ballpark it at $150,000. How many miles will that vehicle last? I'm going to call it about 150,000 miles. $150,000, 150,000 miles. It's going to cost $1 a mile just for depreciating the vehicle, if not more, because you got to figure interest and everything else. Then you've got the operating cost. How much is that going to be? Well, LiDAR uses more energy. How much is a Tesla Robotaxi going to cost to operate? Well, $25,000 Robotaxi probably costs Tesla $20,000 if they don't sell it, if they keep it themselves. How much energy does it use? Not much. What's the cost of operating a Tesla Robotaxi? Works out to about $0.05 a mile. Does it last for 1 million miles? So it's a nickel a mile for the Tesla vehicle operate. It's over $1 a mile for the Mobileye robotaxi to operate. Who wins? The competition isn't coming. It's not coming. It's not coming. It's not coming. Is a market cap over 100 trillion really possible? This sounds huge. I think that it's likely there will be some limit that I can't perceive to Tesla's growth. The most likely limit is that governments will intervene to interfere with Tesla's ability to grow in some way or to break Tesla up in some way. But the practical reality is, if they're going to deliver nickel-based batteries for $60 a kilowatt hour, if they're going to be using iron-based batteries at $40 a kilowatt hour or less, if they're going to make vehicles that are as efficient as we're looking at with the 2023 Tesla Compact, with single-frame casting, 48-volt wiring, self-driving, etc., it's going to make the world so much better of a place. If you were listening to this live stream earlier, I talked about this 16-year or 15-year-old girl I know who was hit by a car last week and killed. At some point you have to ask yourself, do the politicians care more about their power? Do they care about saving lives? To me, the answer is obvious. They care more about their power. The efforts, the lengths that governments go to restrict Uber and Lyft, as I think just happened in the UK and happened in California before, and happened in the Florida Keys until 2018, when we know that Uber and Lyft save lives. Like, I think Uber and Lyft are done for once robotaxi comes, but Uber and Lyft reduced drunk driving deaths dramatically. It was a significant gain in reducing drunk driving deaths from Uber and Lyft, and local governments all over the place fought against Uber and Lyft because they were more interested in power and benefiting their special interest friends who own taxi companies than they are in making us safe, saving our children from car accidents. So I'm a little cynical there, sorry. That's not partisan, that's all politicians. Why don't you find the interior shots? Let's see. Like the smash button. Yeah, if you like the channel, if you like this, I actually don't think liking the video helps that much, but it doesn't hurt. Share it with your friends. Share my channel with your friends. Subscribe. Support this channel on Patreon. Buy the t-shirts. The t-shirts are at elonbits.com. Link in the description below to elonbits.com. I got a big variety of shirts now, a big variety of qualities. Like, this is the regular shirt, but now I have higher grade, like premium shirt fabrics and everything. So if you see something you like on there and you don't see the style you want, let me know and I'll just email me and I'll make it. It's a quirky interface. It's not great UX, but if somebody says, "Hey Warren, can you make this?" I probably can. If it's one of the designs I already have in a different type of clothing or a different style of clothing or whatever. You want a women's version of a shirt, I can do that usually. Warren, how soon will you upload your video? I missed the first half. Eugene, I think you can just go to the bar at the bottom of the video here and click the red line, and I think it will take you back to the beginning of the video. You don't have to upload this. What will happen to all the oil countries if oil is no longer needed? So oil is going to be needed for a long time. We're not getting off oil tomorrow, and oil has a lot of uses other than things that pollute. Oil's in plastics, oil's in a lot of things. We will find uses for oil. Oil countries will suffer, but they will not die, and oil will not stop flowing. The spice must flow. How about I bought Tesla stock and all I got is this lousy t-shirt? That's not bad. Yeah, if I did TSLA, that might be safer. Maybe I could do a shirt with TSLA on it with the stock symbol. Maybe that would work. Interesting. Is it possible to use Starlink Wi-Fi on cell phones via one's home account in the future? I believe so. I don't see... If your phone has Wi-Fi and Starlink is providing Wi-Fi, why wouldn't that work? And, use Google Voice for your phone. I use Google Voice for half my phone calls on my cell phone. Go through the scenario if Apple had Tesla build their car. I don't have that scenario. What will happen? Well, I'm looking at your questions. Warren, are you familiar with the company's solar window? How do you think Tesla can take advantage of their product? I don't know enough about solar window to comment. I suspect that the surface area of the windows is small enough that it won't matter a whole lot. It probably isn't worth the cost of the window, if it is what I think it is. T-shirt powered by Tesla. Yeah, that's not bad. Don't let AOC hear you say that. It's just a reality. We're gonna, we're gonna be using oil. Oil is a useful substance, and we will find uses for it. Natural gas is a useful substance. We will find uses for it. Yeah, fertilizers. There's all kinds of things it goes into. Any news on the solar roof? No news yet. I mean, we're waiting for wind certification. Same thing. I don't think they're stalling. I think they have to do some kind of process to verify that this roof will meet the wind requirements, and it may require modifications to the roof to get it to work. They told me about two to 4 weeks ago. They told me it would be 1 to 3 months, so it should be soon. And I am hopeful that it will happen. Guy, if it's miles away from your house, the Wi-Fi probably isn't going to work. Biden's Green Energy Act is danger of being engulfed in fight between organized labor and industry over unionization wages issue. What happens if the Green Act does not pass, Bob? So, Bob, I talked about that earlier in the live stream. Well, first of all, Tesla's going to be fine no matter what. The electric vehicle credits benefit is actually more important to General Motors than it is to Tesla. The other benefits, I think that the solar benefits, the solar credits, and the energy storage benefits are probably less likely to be a problem for unions. Those are more valuable to Tesla. They're more likely to go through. So, is the Texas crisis a setback for Tesla? I don't think so. I don't see why it would be. I think Tesla got a lot of good PR. First of all, Tesla did the company did a lot of good things, and homeowners who had Powerwall still had power. My thoughts on climate change and specifically Florida going underwater by the end of the century. Can all of these New Yorkers actually be wrong when deciding to move to Florida? So, I don't think there's any projection from anyone that I live at 20 feet above sea level. I don't think there's any projection of sea level rising more than even 2 feet. So I don't think there's a serious concern about Florida going underwater in centuries. Elon can build a new gigafactory just with earnings from holding Bitcoin. Well, I think the issue is going to be that the next gigafactory, there's going to be a new generation of gigafactories, which I talked about earlier in the call. If you go back to when I was talking about transition, you can go back in the video and you can just see where the green box is. So when I was talking about the transition, I think when I was talking about the transition, I talked about the next generation Tesla gigafactory is going to be very different, very much more efficient, producing much more efficient vehicles. A lot going on there. I think, Jeff, I looked up Aircrete. I don't think Aircrete is there yet. I don't think that's it. Is there an update on the boring Neuralink investment endeavor? If you're not on the email list, get on the email list and you will get updates on the boring Neuralink investment endeavor. The email list is linked in the description below. There is an update on it. I probably talked about it between news and I probably talked about it somewhere up here, but I don't remember exactly where. The only reason to put anything in Indonesia is nickel and the government requirement that they have to produce something in the country. Yes, I think it's likely that I could see Tesla building a Terafactory in Indonesia. I just talked with somebody about a factory. Somebody asked about whether I think there'd be a factory planned in the Middle East. On Clubhouse last night, I talked to a guy who's from the United Arab Emirates. This is one of those things that people have to realize when you're talking about whether there'd be a gigafactory somewhere. Tom, $5. Thank you for your support. Are you taking into account price of Bitcoin and future guesses in Tesla share price? No. I have not considered Bitcoin in any of my models yet, and I don't expect to consider it. The Bitcoin purchase was 0.2% of Tesla's market cap. So the question was about factory planned in the Middle East. So I was talking with this guy from the United Arab Emirates, and I think this thing that people don't grasp, you have to think about this with any country where you're thinking, should there be a gigafactory here? There's two things. How big is the population and how much money do they have? What portion of the population has the income to be able to buy a Tesla? And is it enough to support a gigafactory that's probably going to produce 1 million vehicles a year? Right? Because current generation gigafactory, the Fremont generation gigafactory is producing 500,000 vehicles a year. Giga Berlin and Giga Texas are probably going to be more than 1 million vehicles a year. So the next generation gigafactory might be shooting for 2 million, 4 million vehicles a year. I think they're shooting for 4 to 5 million vehicles a year in the next generation gigafactory. So India, the Middle East. It's going to be China. It's going to be the US or Canada, which has basically free trade with Canada. And it's going to be Europe. I'm predicting in my head, and I could be wrong. Look, we're always wrong. We're hoping to be less wrong. If I'm correct that they're going to have a gigafactory that's designed to produce the Tesla Compact and it's going to spit out 4 million of them a year, then there's going to be one in China, one in North America, and one in Europe. And I don't know if there's room for another one. I don't know if there's demand enough for those vehicles once they become robo-taxis to support producing more than that. Until you head to the podcar robo-taxis, and then you get the electric, the minibus van. Where would that be produced and where would that have the most demand? That's an interesting question. I think India is a great market for the minibus. I think there's if you go way back on my channel, I had an interview with, I'm going to say with a homeless person. And I talked to him about people who are very poor won't be able to afford robo-taxis even when they're really, really cheap. But they may be able to afford riding in a minibus that cuts the cost by 90% from what it costs to ride in a robo-taxi and is a little less convenient. Are they going to close out-of-date Fremont? This is a part of the conversation in the transition question that maybe I didn't get to, was transition question here. Once you have these next-generation gigafactories producing 4 million vehicles a year each that are hyper-efficient, and the vehicles are hyper-efficient, at some point does it make sense to shut down Fremont because the vehicles it produces are so much less efficient and so much more costly? I think so. Yeah, Giga Japan makes sense. Maybe, I don't know if even Japan's market is gig enough. Japan is the 4th largest car market in the world. It's China, the US, and Europe, and I forget whether the US is bigger than Europe. Japan is probably big enough, and they could probably export from Japan. I just don't think India is big. I don't think India's population is huge, but the economy and the number of people who can afford Teslas isn't big enough, but maybe for a minibus. Isn't the cost on labor a major factor for a factory in China? I don't think labor cost is a big part of Tesla's costs. I think capital is a huge cost. I'm sure labor is a cost, and especially the next generation Gigafactory is probably going to have a lot more. It's going to be designed for a lot more robots. The 48-volt wiring is going to allow for more rigid wiring setup, which is it's going to be designed for this so that they won't have to have humans place the wiring. Wiring is really difficult for robots to manipulate. It's much easier for humans to manipulate. So that's an example of where they need humans. You eliminate a lot of humans in the process when you cast the vehicle and you do it right with wiring, and you just end up with a lot less labor content in the vehicle. JB asks, when are we going to see Tesla stop selling off? I don't make short-term stock predictions. I talked about this above. I think that short-term stock predictions are impossible. I think Wall Street, and it's insane that, one of the reasons for for people selling off Tesla was they bought Bitcoin when they made money on Bitcoin. I don't understand the rationale. Well, we made money on Bitcoin, so Tesla made, $500 million in Bitcoin, so we should sell their stock. I don't understand that rationale at all. Oh, Tom, I'm not dismissing Bitcoin in the price. I just don't use it in my models. That doesn't mean it's not nothing. I just don't use it in my models. My models are about the business, not how they hold cash. My models are, okay, they're going to have this many batteries. They're going to produce this many vehicles, this many products. This is how much revenue they make for these batteries and these vehicles and these products. And Bitcoin is 0.2% of the investment they made in Bitcoin was 0.2% of their market cap. If it 10x's, it will be 2% of their market cap. If their market cap doesn't grow otherwise, it's not a big part of the business. I don't think it's necessary to model Bitcoin, include Bitcoin in my models, when in our dreams it'll be 2% of the company's market cap, and I don't think it'll even reach that. Because in the time it takes to 10x, Tesla will 2 or 3x. So it'll be 1% of the market cap. It's not a big part of the business. I agree that battery energy company in India could make a lot of sense. Yes, that's a good point. I think they'll update the Fremont production lines, but at a certain point, it may be that the Fremont factory is just so out of date that it makes sense to end it, and they don't like being in California. Elon doesn't like being in California. Isn't it true that India's regulatory environment is not good? Generally speaking, my impression is that India has a very difficult regulatory environment. Whether they can get through that, people thought that about China, and it worked out. So maybe it's true. So Putin is romancing Elon for a factory in Russia. I don't think Russia has a big enough market for a gigafactory. Maybe a battery factory would make sense in Russia. I want to see if you guys follow my fascination with the Boring Company. I want to see Boring Bering. I want to see a Boring Company do a tunnel through the Bering Strait that would go through Russia and down to China and then across the tundra to Europe to connect the west coast of the United States with East Asia and Europe. And maybe it's possible to do a Boring Company tunnel through Greenland, Iceland, over to the UK. I think that one might be too difficult to pull off. So if you did it through the Bering Strait, you would be able to connect Europe to Asia and North America. That might make sense. Yeah, would they go with... That's a good point, Jim. Will they go with 48 volt for Cybertruck? That's a really good question. It could be time to go to 48 volt with Cybertruck. You know, Elon wants to do that. That would be cool. How is Tesla labor force included in the Tesla fortune? I don't know. I mean, the Tesla labor force typically owns Tesla stock, and they're really happy about it. Do I think India and Bangladesh and other poor countries would be a prime market for robotaxi pod cars? No, I think that for very poor people, minibuses are much more cost effective. It's really hard to get the cost down low enough for very poor people for a single passenger, for a vehicle carrying a single passenger. If they're sharing, if they're in a 20, like in India, you could put 30 people in what would be a 20 passenger minibus in the US and maybe 40. And the cost per person, per passenger mile is so low that it ends up being cheap enough that poor people can afford to ride in it. And if you do it with a Tesla minibus robo-taxi, it's going to be more convenient than the existing mass transit they have. And if you do it in Boring Company tunnels, you know, there's a lot of potential there. Sorry, Paulus, demolition Tesla Fremont factory, future Fremont factory 2.0. No, I think it's just they wind down the Fremont factory and they do less in California. I think that Elon is going to move the headquarters of all his companies to Austin, Texas. If you watched the Joe Rogan interview, Elon said that Austin is going to be he said something about Austin becoming a monster boomtown. I don't remember the exact words he used, but Austin is going to grow like crazy. There's a job ad on the Neuralink website for a head of construction in Austin, Texas. So Neuralink is moving to Austin, Texas. There is a job ad that we know the Boring Company is building something in Austin, Texas. SpaceX already has big operations in the southern tip of Texas. I think Elon is going to make Austin, Texas the hub for all his companies. And when that happens, you know, there's not a lot of reason to stay in California. Maybe Model Y, Model S and X and Roadster are produced in California. Maybe that stays. But those are low volume vehicles, you know. Yeah, Jim, I think the thing is what he said was, I think he was saying they were not going 48 volt for Model Y in Texas or Berlin, and it's the next generation. So whether the next generation is the Cybertruck factory, the next generation is the next factory location, we'll see. I'm reading your chat comments to see if there's something I can answer. Hey Warren, your thoughts on Model X and S refresh having same gaming power as latest Xbox and PS5? I don't really pay attention to that gaming stuff. I think it's cool. I don't think it's... The Tesla mission is more about accelerating the transition to sustainable energy than it is about having fun in the car. And I think a lot of people prefer gaming on their phone anyway. I don't know how much people are going to want to use that screen for gaming. I think the really bigger step is when you get to the point where it's a full-on robo-taxi and you don't bother putting windows in it, and you put a huge flat screen up or multiple flat screens up, and you have a front flat screen and side flat screens, and you create an immersive virtual game or immersive virtual experience. Tesla just applied for permits to expand the Fremont factory by over 60,000 square feet more. Interesting. I think that's probably for the battery line. Tom, where did you see that? Where did you see that about? I'll Google that. Why make the temporary tent permanent? Well, I don't know the details about making the temporary tent permanent, so I can't answer that. Elon said that Austin will be the biggest boomtown in 50 years. Real estate there is going crazy already. Yeah, absolutely. Well, people are fleeing California. They're fleeing New York. I think you might be late on the real estate investing in Austin, Texas, but it might be a good idea. Warren, do you think China is doing negative publicity to slow down Tesla growth in China since NIO is backed by the CCCP? I don't know why so many people hate China. I don't want to get into politics. I don't know enough about the Chinese government to be critical. My impression is that China is more capitalist than the United States today. I think the Chinese love Tesla because they want to breathe clean air, and Tesla is you can be the richest person in the world, you can be the most powerful politician or bureaucrat in China, and you still have to breathe the crappy air. And if Tesla can come, no one is going to clean China's air better than Tesla. No one is going to do more to clean China's air than Elon Musk. So if you are China and you want your children to breathe clean air, you want Elon Musk to be successful in China. And the same thing is true in India, and the same thing. And in China, those people have enough power to make it happen. That's why it happened. Battery factory in every continent in major countries. I think the battery factories need to be near the vehicle factories, but maybe there's some sense in if you have a really good deal on nickel from Indonesia, it makes sense to make the batteries there and ship them where the vehicles are being made. Can a Tesla semi fit into a boring tunnel? I think the answer is no, but I think there might be a version of it that would be a yes. I mean, the Cybertruck barely fits in, and the semi is a lot as bigger, I think. So I think the answer is no. But they have a system for transporting shipping containers, the 8-foot by 8-foot by 40-foot. I think they're 8 by 8. They have a design to ship cargo containers in the boring tunnels without needing a semi. The 60,000 square foot expansion is making the tent permanent they put up last year. Well, permanent doesn't mean permanent. You probably just got, permitted to extend it indefinitely. Sandy Monroe said that Tesla has 10 more gigapresses on order. What do you think they will do with them? They will make a lot of cars. They're going to make Model Ys. They're going to make Cybertrucks. 2 gigapresses for one Model Y line. 2 gigapresses for one Model 3 line. 1 gigapress for the Cybertruck rear. I don't think they're doing a gigapress for the front. I don't know what they're doing on the front. That's going to be an interesting question. Everyone has severe human rights abuses, not excusing China, but we are hypocritical judging them. I agree with that. We have our own human rights issues in the United States. Please do some... I'm not interested in doing research in the Chinese Communist Party. I live in the United States, and I have concerns with my own government. Romu, don't dismiss the actions of the U.S. government. We bomb more countries than they do. The United States government is bombing 8 countries right now. The Chinese government is bombing 0. So don't tell me that China is a bad government. I'm not fond of my government bombing 8 countries. Any concern about Tesla getting hacked and Tesla cars going rogue? No, I have no concern about that. I'm pretty confident that Elon is a good enough programmer and that Andrej Karpathy is a good enough programmer that they can prevent that from happening. It's actually a bigger issue with maybe Mobileye vehicles. I would be more... And what was the guy? Wasn't there some famous actor who got killed and they said somebody hacked his car? I don't know if it's true or not as a conspiracy theory, but... the guy from Fast and Furious, I thought he died in a car accident. People said that his car had been hacked. I don't know if that's true or not. But I think it's more likely that other cars will be hacked than Tesla cars. Max asks, how is your doghouse project coming? I thought somebody asked me that already. I'm hoping to finish to create the doorway. It's got to have a special hinge so the door can swing in and out because the dog can't pull it out if it's stuck inside or whatever. So, I think I have everything I need for that, and I might be able to do the door today, and then we'll put on some of the soundproofing, and it may be ready to go. And then we got to put the fan in and secure the fan so it stays in place so it ventilates because there's a concern with the doghouse about adequately ventilating the doghouse. Transition will not be a problem. Consumers are not savvy enough to bother researching one-piece casting versus 169-piece weldment. Yes, but if the vehicle weighs less, it's going to perform better, and people are going to know. And Car and Driver is going to say the Giga Texas version drives better. And it's going to cost Tesla less to make the vehicle. And so it matters to Tesla anyway. USA here, but that 75-inch TV in your living room for $500 is not possible without China. Yeah, that's true. Have you had any good sashimi lately? No, Kentaro. There's a particularly good sushi place in Boca Raton. It's named Sushi Go. It's on Federal Highway in Boca Raton. It's on Federal Highway in Boca Raton. A little bit north of Palmetto Park Road. Run by a guy who used to work in a high-end Japanese restaurant. He's Korean, but he runs it. It's like the best. It's the highest grade sushi. It's really expensive, and they're not open for. I don't want to spend $60 on a sushi meal, and have to take it home. I want to eat. I want the experience of eating in. So I'm frustrated. And there's another place near me that's a Korean restaurant that has pretty good sushi, and pretty good bulgogi, obviously. And they are not open for dine-in either. So I haven't had theirs. And other than that, I mostly don't like the sushi and sashimi in South Florida. Maybe there's a place in Miami I would go to, but I haven't gone down there yet. Um, all rich rebuilds to build you a doghouse. Now I think I'm doing it myself. This is a project. If you're not familiar with the doghouse project idea, the idea is to build a doghouse that sits inside the house that's sound insulated. Thank you, Paulus. The dogs don't like thunder and lightning and fireworks. And our dog gets very upset when there's thunder and lightning and fireworks, and she likes to go in my car in the garage because my car is well sound insulated. So the question is, can I make a box inside the house that is an appropriate size for my dog that provides some level of sound insulation and is preferable to the dog? And then if I do that, I'm building the alpha version now out of cheap, shitty plywood. Excuse my French. The next generation, the next prototype will be made of inch-thick hardwood. I decided because it's going to be relatively easy to do that and won't cost that much more. And then, we'll see if the first prototype works. Learn from building that, then build the next one, and then get to the point where say, okay, I'm sorry for people who hate China. I'm not really sorry. Can we get this? Can we design this so it can be made in China and shipped to consumers? And it costs $25 for the device, for the thing, and easily assembled by consumers because you don't want to ship a box. You want to ship pieces separate. And can we sell that for $100 through Amazon or something? Is that something we can do? Thank you, Christopher, for your support. Jim Bates, this might be get me blocked, but did you catch Bo fifth column post? I don't even know what that is. Can't get you blocked because I don't even know what it is. Do you believe now it is a good time to continue to add to my Tesla stock position? I am not a professional investment advisor. I cannot give you investment advice. I can tell you, like, this week I bought Tesla stock, so you know my opinion about whether it's a good time to invest in Tesla. I bought at 773 and it's trading around 780, so I probably think it's a good investment at 780 since I just bought it. But I can't give you advice because I don't know your situation and I'm not a professional investment advisor. Doghouse, the next generation, next iteration. Yeah. So, Apple's going to release on Monday that Tesla building the Apple car. No, that's not going to happen. Machine that builds a doghouse. Yeah, well, I don't think the doghouse idea will ever be big enough to have a gigafactory. You're French and what didn't sound French? Austin had daytime temperatures below freezing last week. San Diego's lowest temperatures at night were 40 to 50 degrees and days in the 60s and 70s. So Texas does freeze occasionally. I live in South Florida. If you want to come somewhere, I love Texas. I love South Florida. I actually love the San Diego area as well. But if you were thinking about moving to Texas, and you might want to consider South Florida because I don't think it's snowed here. I don't think it's snowed or froze here in more than 40 years. I lived in Houston. I went to college in Houston, Texas, and we did get snow in my 4 years there. We did get snow once. It was like a 16th of an inch, and it caused 300 accidents in the first hour. And I'm from New York. I've driven in snow my whole life, so I thought it was hilarious. Not hilarious for the people who are in accidents. Am I moving if Tesla stock goes crazy? So I guess the question might be, Matt, if I suddenly became extremely wealthy, which is looking good, not much wealthier than I'm already not poor, right? I already live a upper middle class or lower wealthy life. I'm not poor. I live comfortably, whatever. My wife and I have talked that if we all of a sudden had a lot of money, we might buy something near the ocean. Because we live 10 miles from the ocean. We never go. We like walking on the beach, but we never get around to doing it. And if we were able to afford something that was on the ocean, we could walk out of our home and right to the beach and walk on the beach, we probably would do that. So that's expensive. So I don't know. I don't think we're doing that, but maybe. I don't know what Bowen, Florida is. Jim, I don't know who Bowen, Florida is. Jim, if you want to email me whatever this Bowen, Florida thing is, I'll take a look at it. Or direct message me on Twitter if you're on Twitter. I read my direct messages on Twitter. Motion detection inside the doghouse for the fan you mentioned. No, so the deal is that you want to make sure that the doghouse is ventilated, period. Because you don't want the dog to suffocate. So you just ventilate it the full time, all the time, and it costs $4 a year for the electricity for running it full time. I don't guess, Manny, I don't guess when short-term things happen. Joe, yes, Starlink can succeed without Starship. I believe that Starship significantly lowers the cost of Starlink launching a Starlink satellite, like 10x. Like, you know, I think it's $50,000 a satellite with Falcon 9, and I think it's $5,000 a satellite for launch cost. But it probably costs more to build the device. So let's say it's $100,000 for a Starlink satellite. It might be 200 or 250, but let's say it's 100. If the launch cost goes from 50 to 5, you're not really having a huge impact on the cost structure of the satellite network. It's significant, but compared to the revenue, it's not that significant. I don't think it's a big deal. I'm not moving to New Zealand. I would move to Costa Rica maybe, or Panama. So there have been freeze events in Florida that damage orange crops, but we don't have orange crops in South Florida. The oranges are north of here. At least not, I haven't seen an orange grove here. I've seen orange groves north of here. The cyber cabin is near orange groves. The cyber cabin will be near orange groves, but not here. I don't want a mansion on the beach. I want a small home. We don't need a mansion. I don't need a big home. Oh, of the fifth column, a YouTuber who is worth the watch. All right, if I remember, somebody send me an email or a direct message and I'll look up of the fifth column. Doesn't sound like something I would like, but I'll take a look. Solar roof on the doghouse. The doghouse is going to be inside the house. So that's not going to make sense. Just plug. We already planned to put it near an outlet, so we just run it constantly. Rent out a doghouse at cost to tenants for a few years and then build later. It might be a way to get a second house now. No, let me be clear. I can afford to live on the ocean now. Not a good financial choice. And our kid is in school still, and the school is 2 miles from our home, and moving to another place with a kid in high school is not really a good idea. Yeah, please click the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Please share this video with your friends. Share the channel with your friends. Will Tesla get into VTOL? For those who don't know, VTOL is vertical takeoff and landing jets. Elon has talked about eVTOL. I think even in the Iron Man movie, with Elon had a cameo in the Iron Man movie and talked about an eVTOL jet. I think he loves the idea. I think it's too much work, and I think the market for an eVTOL jet is very small, especially once the Boring Company starts doing Hyperloop. Once Hyperloop comes along, air travel becomes irrelevant. That's my opinion. I could be persuaded otherwise. I don't know the cost structure of the eVTOL jet. It sounds like a billionaire's toy to me, and Elon is a billionaire, so maybe he wants one, but I don't know if it makes sense. And the deal is that Elon said you need to get battery chemistry to the point where you achieve more than 400 watt-hours per kilogram, and they're not there yet. He thinks they're going to get there in maybe 4 or 5 years. But, you know, you're still going to have, until you get to significantly more than 400 watt-hours per kilogram, the jet would not have a lot of range. So it just doesn't necessarily make sense. If you're going on a short trip, then a regular Boring Company tunnel is probably more efficient and effective. If you're going on a longer trip, Hyperloop is probably going to solve the problem. And then going on a really long trip, Starship point to point. In your opinion, if Tesla split share price, I don't talk about splits. Don't ask me about splits. I think splits are completely irrelevant. If I give you 5 $20 bills and I say, if I have 5 $20 bills and you have a $100 bill and I say, I'll give you the 5 20s for a $100 bill, but you got to give me $1 extra. Would you do it? They're both worth $100. Who cares about splits? Splits don't matter. I don't care. I'm not interested. I don't know why people are so obsessed with splits. Okay. Oh, a crappy house, not a dog house. Yeah, Tesla could ship. So, this is a thing I didn't mention in the transition part that I should talk about, which is there's this moment there. I don't think I talked about this. There's this prospect of having EV tax credits that you buy an electric vehicle and you're going to get like a $7,000 tax credit. And this prospect is looming. So I think there are people who are thinking of buying a Tesla and holding off because they're waiting to see if the tax credit gets through Congress and gets signed by Biden. And if that's going to happen, so I could see where Tesla would say, I could see where Tesla may have started if they see a reduction in demand in the US right now for their vehicles, they might start shipping vehicles from Fremont to Europe or elsewhere or Japan because of this window of time where there's less demand for Tesla vehicles because of the prospect of the tax credit. Warren Redlick, talk about Meet Kevin's interview with Sandy Munro. Sandy believing in hydrogen and the competition is tech, not a company as a whole yet. So I found the Meet Kevin interview with Sandy Munro frustrating. I thought he didn't ask him good questions. I thought it may be Meet Kevin's style, or maybe like a personality quirk or something, or some kind of, attention deficit disorder, but he wasn't looking at Sandy in the eye. He's constantly looking away. Sandy did say he thinks hydrogen's going to make sense for semi and then batteries won't. That seems to be a common misconception. I think Tesla's going to crush that concept in less than a year. Yes, Hyperloop will run in boring company tunnels. Elon has said so. And I don't think Elon's alone in that. Hyperloop will run in the boring company tunnels. The boring company tunnels have to be watertight, and they are basically, if not completely, airtight. And they would have to remove air from the tunnels to basically make them into vacuums to make Hyperloop work, but I think that's coming. Some people only have $20, but you can buy fractional shares in most brokers now. It doesn't matter. Splits don't matter. Splits don't matter. You can buy fractional shares. Splits don't matter. Splits don't matter. Splits don't matter. I'm sorry. Splits don't matter. They do not matter for long-term value. They matter if you want to, if you have $100 and you want to buy $120 stock and they split, 6 ways to $20 a share. Yeah, you can buy 5 shares. Okay, I get that. But for the vast majority of investors, the vast majority of the money that's being invested, splits don't matter. Berkshire Hathaway, I don't know what Berkshire Hathaway trades at. Amazon's trading at like $3,200. Hey, Warren, have you ever thought of selling covered calls on some of your positions at a high strike price to generate extra income off your shares? No. I don't generally play with options. I'm just a buy and hold investor. Doing something like that sounds too complicated for my small brain. I don't want to think about that. I think there are transactions costs and consequences of anything like that that are messy, and I don't want to deal with it. I do have a theory that Uber and Lyft will die. That when the robotaxi network goes live, the profit story, the investor story for Uber and Lyft is, yes, we're losing money now, but we're going to grow out of that. The minute robotaxi network goes live and starts competing with Uber and Lyft, they lose market share. Their growth story dies, and the companies should die. Now, with that said, we live in a crazy world of investors where Nikola Motors is still not zero. Why Nikola Motors is not trading at zero, I don't understand. But we live in a crazy world that's possible. So my bet on, I bought put option, long puts, 2-year put options on Uber and Lyft. If they go bankrupt, I make an insane amount of money. If they don't fall, then I lose a small amount of money. I'm not recommending this investment strategy for anybody else. I'm just trying out an idea, and I may lose my money. But it seems to me that if once the robotaxi network is working in, let's say, South Florida or Los Angeles, and Uber and Lyft start losing market share in those markets, the growth story is dead. And any investor who's thinking long-term will say, there's no reason to hold this company. If there's a reason to hold a company that's losing money, it's because it might grow out of it. If the growth story is gone, then you're holding a company that's losing money. When are you ever going to make money on the stock? Watch you are wandering into stock investment comments. It's a choice, like put your change in a jar. I don't know what you mean by that. So Garfield, I don't know. I mean, I thought I was annoyed by Meet Kevin's demeanor in the interview. I think Sandy Munro was annoyed by the interview. I think if you look at Sandy's face, there were times when he looked annoyed at the questions that were being asked, and Kevin's looking away and apparently not paying attention. And like I said, maybe it's some sort of attention deficit disorder, and he's really good at paying attention. There are no transaction costs on selling covered calls. There's always transaction. If you think there's no transactions costs in anything, then you're missing something. There are always transactions costs. I'm sorry. If you believe there's no transactions costs, you're missing something. There are always, always, always transactions costs. One benefit of splits is psychological appeal to new young investors and anyone who doesn't comprehend market cap. Okay, but that's a small impact. Then why doesn't Amazon split? Why doesn't Berkshire Hathaway split? It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. Look, it's five $20 bills or $100 bill. Do you really see a difference there? And you can buy fractional shares now, so that like any argument for splits disappeared after that. I don't know. I guess I have not been at the point in my investing life where I have worried about splits. I've always invested enough that whatever I wanted to buy, it was a trivial detail and I didn't worry about it. And I suppose if you're a very small investor, it matters. But I think probably 90 to 95% of the money in the stock market is investors who are big enough that they don't care about splits. So it shouldn't affect stock price because 95% of the investors don't care. That's an opinion. And I'm not claiming I'm an expert on splits. I'm just claiming I don't care. I don't see it's a long run that matters in the long run. MG, yes, people have asked me if splits matter. You believe this economic model is scientifically valid, you are in for a rude awakening. Which economic model? Split in 2031, whatever. Okay. It gives you just the feeling you hold more shares. Anyone taking notes during an interview is really bad. Okay, if being reminded what to ask next. He was doing more than taking notes. He was like getting text messages or something. I don't know what he was doing. Warren, with all due respect, if you have 100 shares and it splits now and I have 500, why would I not be interested when those 500 shares rise in price? You have 100 shares and it splits and now I have 500 because the 100 shares, because if you have 100, let's say the 100 shares are worth $1,000 and the five total, right? You have 100 shares that are $10 a share and it splits to 500 shares worth $2 a share. When the stock goes up, it goes by the same percentage. I just don't get it. Warren, for someone who doesn't usually owe taxes, how would they take full advantage of the tax credit? That's a question for an accountant way over my head. Keith Clipstein, thank you for joining the channel. Terry Sullivan, I was born and raised until 7 in Santa Monica. Then my folks moved 50 miles inland. Damn, yeah, you probably lost a lot in real estate value there. How many shares of Tesla is considered a large position? Depends on your opinion. If you have more than me, you have a large position. If you have less than me, you have a small position. Have you ever seen the George Carlin bit about drivers? Anyone driving faster than you is a maniac. Anyone driving slower than you is an idiot. I think that's the bit. Maniac and idiot. Is it maniac and idiot? I think it's maniac and idiot. The value of a stock is the profits that is based on the profits it's going to generate. The value of a stock is not based on splits. If you believe that the value of a stock is based on splits, then I think you're missing it. Have I considered steel hut type of buildings for cyber house? I don't know what a steel hut type of building is. I am probably going to do what's known as a steel building. I don't know what the hut part is. You had to pay for an hour of Sandy Monroe's time to interview him, would you? I think that's how these things happen. No, I would not. I don't think I could afford to pay for an hour of his time. This channel does not generate that. These videos do not generate that much revenue. Even with him, it wouldn't generate enough revenue for it to be worth it. And I don't generally pay people for an hour of their time to have a conversation. I think they get publicity out of it and they decide whether it's worth it or not. Thoughts on CCIV? I think CCIV/Lucid is a joke. I don't think it's a good investment. I will not invest in it. I am thinking about buying puts on CCIV if the merger goes through, which may happen Monday, but they keep saying that. Quonset hut. I looked at Quonset huts. They're very easy to build. They're very inexpensive, but they're very impractical to use, to insulate, to live in. They're very impractical for those purposes. I might do a Quonset hut for an extra building on the cyber cabin property to store things like a kayak, or I'm gonna have a shooting range on the property, store equipment for the shooting range. I might do it for that purpose. It's Quonset, Quonset. Yes, Dave, exactly. Not paying for time coming from a lawyer, exactly. I don't like paying for people's time, even lawyer time. Definitely not into hookers, no. Did you look up the Excel sheet on Tesla crashes in your last live chat? I don't know what Excel sheet you're talking about, Arun. What's Elon's fork in the road Twitter profile picture about? Discuss. Great question. Great question. So if you missed it, I should have screenshotted that. Elon changed his Twitter profile picture to a fork sticking in the double yellow line in the road. And I think he changed the text of his Twitter profile to metaphork. METAPHORK. So one theory is he just thought it was funny, which I think is about half of Elon's tweets, is he just thinks something's funny. Another theory is that either he or one of his companies is making a decision right now. They're choosing which path to go. I would say it could very well be an FSD issue. Because it could be a Bitcoin issue, or I think there's an issue with forks in cryptocurrencies and blockchains. There's an issue with forks in the road and FSD. A lot of possibilities there. I'm not sure what he was going for with that. And my number one guess is he just thought it was funny. Oh, Jim Bates, the property is 300 by 150, so and the diagonal I can have a 100-yard range. And I can place the cyber cabin so it is out of the way of the cyber cabin is going to go on the back half of the property on the side, and it will not be long enough to be in the way of the shooting range. Cheerleader splits matter. Yes, most lawyers can't afford their own fees for very long. It's insane how much lawyers charge for their time. A few weeks ago, I compared split. Okay, I'm not talking about splits anymore. I'm not talking about splits anymore. Dogecoin came out of a fork of Litecoin. Is that true? I did not know that. Yeah, Dogecoin is interesting. He's been talking about Dogecoin a lot. I think it's pronounced Dogecoin. And I think the question, he's raised this issue that there's too much concentration of Dogecoin. I think there's one person or entity that owns 28% of Dogecoin, and he wants to get them to sell off some Dogecoin. And that if that happens, he will promote Dogecoin more. I think there were multiple holders who have large percentages, which he thinks is not good. I actually think that Elon should start a coin. Tesla coin, Mars coin. I think if Elon created a cryptocurrency, it would, make it would be hugely successful. I'm surprised he hasn't decided to do that, because it would be, very low effort for Elon to pull off a cryptocurrency. Maybe even two cryptocurrencies, because I have this theory that no cryptocurrency is optimized for Earth-Mars transactions. Earth and Mars are at their closest 12 minutes away, but they're often a lot more than 12 minutes away. And the blockchain updates, the Bitcoin blockchain updates, if you had a blockchain that only updated once a day, or two or three times a day, that might make more sense for Earth to Mars transactions. Just an idea. Should the robotaxi fleet be rolled out as a food delivery service first, just to check crash rates? No. But I think some sort of food delivery option with robotaxi makes a lot of sense. What do I think about the pilot factory Nikola is building in Nevada? I don't think about it. I love when somebody asks you a question. Sake coin, that's not bad. Sake coin. Nihonshu coin. Yes. John Smith, send me an email. Send me an email. I'd love to talk to you. Especially if you have 6.5 Creedmoor. You'll sell me 6.5 Creedmoor at cost. We got a lot to talk about. The ammo. I just got a 6.5 Creedmoor rifle. Let's see. Elon says if the big holder was willing to sell, he would pay $1 a coin over $1 billion. That guy or lady should do it like hitting the lottery. If the big holder was willing to sell, he would pay $1 a coin over $1 billion. Interesting. Tesla doesn't have to do everything. There are other companies to deal with and produce other products. Doge. Yeah, Doge. Doge. Am I saying it right? Dogecoin? I think I'm saying it right. Elon might be the founder of Bitcoin already. I doubt it. There was a pretty good article I read about who formed Bitcoin, and they have a pretty good idea who it was. I don't think CRISPR Therapeutics is interesting, but I don't think about it. It's too. I feel like genomic therapies are always. It's kind of like nuclear fusion. It's always 5 or 10 years away. I think genomics has moved from being always 10 years away to being always 5 years away. But I don't think they're there yet. I just don't think it's quite ready yet. It's close, but I don't know enough. And Kathy Wood ARK Invest, they know a lot more about that stuff. I don't have any insight into it. Will Tesla get into last mile delivery drones? I don't think so. Is the Nikola factory at the top of a hill? Very good, Scott. That's a good one. You got me laughing. I think most coins will go to zero, but Bitcoin, Ethereum, and maybe there's room for 2 or 3 other coins. Maybe. No one has 6.5 Creedmoor engine. My email is wredlich@gmail.com, wredlich@gmail.com. It's in my, I think if you look at my channel, it's in the about, or you can direct message me on Twitter. There's probably other things we can talk about besides Creedmoor. Why not talk about Tesla in Russia, big market? And Russia is not a big market. Russia's economy is smaller than Texas's economy, and it might be smaller than Florida's economy. It's a decent sized population, but they don't have any money, and they have a terrible economy. Everything I've seen. It's a kleptocracy. 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 I mean, I think we all live in kleptocracies, but I think Russia's is a particularly big one. And I don't know enough about Russia. It's just my impression from talking to Russians. Is Dojo to Tesla as AWS is to Amazon? No, I think AWS is much more important to Amazon, but Dojo could be like that. I think it could play a role. Okay, I think it could play. I don't know how big Dojo could become. I guess I would say that it's possible it could become as big as Amazon Web Services. I can see the t-shirt. Nikola, the best EVs to roll down a road. That's not bad. Why does Elon want to talk with Putin? Great question. I think he just wants to interview him. I think he just wanted to have a fun interview. I'm surprised Putin didn't say yes. Putin's got balls, man. I'm surprised he didn't say yes. I would think he would love that. Maybe it was, Elon's interview of, if you didn't catch it, Elon interviewed the CEO of Robinhood. It was sort of this impromptu interview on a Clubhouse. And it was a devastating interview. Elon's questions were just really, really good, and the guy was really, really bad. And I was thinking Elon could be the next Oprah. Not Oprah, but he could do a phenomenal interview show if he wanted to do something. The questions he asks are way, way brilliant. Tesla does use 3D printing in their manufacturing, but 3D printing does not scale. They use 3D printing at a small level, at a micro level, to manufacture certain components they might need that are not in volume. Putin doesn't want to become a meme the way. Yeah, I would think anybody who saw how Elon interviewed Vlad from Robinhood would say, I don't want to run the risk that Elon's going to ask me the wrong question I don't want to answer. Maybe Elon is buying Russia. That's good. Well, no, I mean, Elon could talk to Putin. I'm sure if he wanted to arrange a meeting, he could arrange a meeting. He wanted to talk to him on Clubhouse with an audience. That's something he might not want to do. All right, where are we? 3:22 p.m. I didn't sleep well last night, in case you can't tell. I had a half a glass of Crema Pinot Noir Crema brand, which I drink very little now. I can have a shot of a couple shots of premium rum, and I don't have a problem. But I had this. I'm not doing well with wine and beer anymore, and I didn't sleep well. It's only just a half a glass. I didn't even have that much. Elon asked Vlad if he has a gun to head, and there was a pause. The answer was obviously yes, but he couldn't say it or he was fired. I thought he said blink twice if you're being held hostage. That was one of the funniest moments. He's interviewing a guy over Clubhouse where you can't see anybody. And he says blink twice or you'll be held hostage. Mark, I have a theory that Roadster might be that not the whole vehicle will be 3D printed, but the chassis would be 3D printed. And there's a great video on maybe it's like a TED Talk where somebody talked about there's like this dune buggy racing thing, and somebody came up with a way of 3D printing the chassis, and they put all these sensors on it, and they use AI to figure out how to optimize the chassis. And 3D printing doesn't make sense in high volumes, but it might make sense in low volume. So I could see them using 3D printing to do the Roadster chassis, and it would be incredibly light and incredibly strong. Does 4680 chemistry take us to 2030? So let's be clear. The 4680 is not a chemistry, it's a size. 46 millimeter diameter, 80 millimeter height. I think that there's I'm undecided about whether solid state chemistry. I probably should do a video about solid state if I haven't already. I'm undecided whether solid state chemistries will ever matter. If solid state chemistries come along, whether they would be appropriate in a 4680 cell, I don't know. How impressed are you on a scale of 1 to 10 from Lucid Air? I would say 0. I am not impressed with Lucid Air. When they deliver a car, I will then have a chance to be impressed. Host more rooms on Clubhouse. Okay. I've been thinking about doing a room on Clubhouse. I think I'm planning on doing a room on Clubhouse with somebody maybe tomorrow. I think I talked about doing a room with somebody in Clubhouse, and it might be tomorrow that we're doing it. I got to check on that. I think we were going to talk about Starlink. Use 3D printing to build a Tesla home. I don't think for 3D printing scales. I've said that before. Russia's going to find citizens using. Well, yeah, it might be that Elon wants to talk to Putin about Starlink because Starlink is optimal for Russia's latitude. Could be a very good thing for Russia. And it could be very good. That's interesting to see whether China and Russia allow Starlink and what Elon has to do in terms of censorship to satisfy them. That could be the issue. That they're not going to want it because of censorship issues, but Elon is probably going to be cooperative with whatever censorship they want to do. Scott says Elon was talking about carbon fiber for a roadster that could be 3D printed. I don't remember him talking about carbon fiber. It takes a day or two to 3D print a house and cheap. Mark, send me an email about 3D printing a house in a day and how much does it cost? I would love to see more about that. I have not, and I think it depends on the house, right? If it's a 10 by 10 cabin, sure. Model S is here already. Why bother with Lucid? Yes, I agree with that. If are they going to live? Let me just ask this question there because I've seen a lot of questions about Lucid. Does anybody in the audience think that Lucid has better engineers than Tesla? Simple question. Not as good, better. Does anybody in the audience, anybody listening to this YouTube video, tell me in the chat if you think that Lucid has better engineers than Tesla? Why do I say better? Because they're claiming their vehicle is going to have 517 miles of range this spring, which is more range than any Tesla vehicle by far. It's 100 miles more range than the long-range Model S. So, anybody think that? Okay. Now, next question. If the answer to that question is no, right? Because everybody's going to agree that question is no. What do you think that Lucid has better engineers than Porsche? Why do you think? If the answer is yes, why do you think Lucid has better engineers than Porsche? Because Porsche has some pretty good engineers. Right? And they came up with a Taycan, which is a pretty good performance vehicle, and it does okay on range, but I don't think under any scenario you can say that the Porsche Taycan is going to get 300 miles of range. Rated for a little over 200. Some people are saying they've seen it get 250 or 270 or whatever in certain circumstances. Porsche's got really good engineers. So why do you think that the Lucid engineers are better than the Porsche engineers, and they're able to deliver a car that's as fast or faster than a Porsche Taycan with more range than a Porsche Taycan? If you believe that that's likely, I'm going to say there's a small chance that it's true that Lucid engineers are good enough to do that, but it's a small, small chance. If you agree with me that it's a very small chance, then what are the odds that Lucid, and here's another question that's related to that. Let's suppose Lucid releases a car. They've claimed that they're going to deliver, they've claimed they're going to deliver cars in the spring, right? The minute they deliver a car and driver, no car magazine has test driven a Lucid Motors vehicle. No one. I actually was in touch with somebody who knows people who work at Lucid Motors, and none of the people this person knows at Lucid Motors has driven the car. There's a very, very select small number of people at Lucid Motors who have actually driven the car. Okay? It's a very, very small number of people. Road and Track hasn't driven the car. Car and Driver hasn't driven the car. Motor Trend hasn't driven the car. Top Gear hasn't driven the car. The minute they release a car and they deliver a car to a customer, Motor Trend, Road and Track, Car and Driver, Top Gear, etc., are going to get a chance to test drive the car. Raise your hand, figuratively, raise your hand if you think that car is going to have 517 miles of range, a 2.5 second 0 to 60 time, and all the other stuff they're claiming. Okay, so the answer to that is there's no way in hell it's going to do 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds and have 517 miles of range. Not going to happen. My prediction, not going to happen. It's not going to break 400 miles of range. That's my prediction. They will not deliver more than 400 miles of range. Be wrong. I'm ready to be wrong, but that's my prediction. And they won't do 2.5 seconds 0 to 60. They probably won't break 3 seconds 0 to 60. It might be 3.5 seconds. If they deliver a car and the road tests show it vastly underperforms what they promised for a $160,000 car, who's buying their cars? And what happens to the stock? Right? And it's by June 21st that they're supposed to deliver a car, because they've said we're going to deliver this spring, and spring ends June 20th. So by June 21st, they got to deliver a car, and Road and Track and Motor Trend and Car and Driver and all these guys, somebody's going to test drive this car and show it for the pig that it is. That's my prediction. I want to be clear. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Lucid proves me wrong. I want Lucid to succeed. They don't genuinely compete with Tesla. $160,000 cars are not competing with Tesla. Okay? The real competition with Tesla, if it's going to come from anywhere, is going to be in the $50,000 or less price range. That's where it's really going to matter. So, does Lucid advertise a Car and Driver at all? I don't know. Any thoughts on Burry? Okay, great question. Any thoughts on Burry saying Tesla is going to $100 this year? So Michael Burry is a guy from The Big Short. He's some semi-famous investor because he bet against the real estate market or something. I don't really know his full story. Everything I've seen is he said it's going to 100 and he offered 0 reasons why. So until he offers reasons why, it's like some jackass said something. Where's the substance behind that statement? Does he think they won't make 100? What does he think how many batteries does Michael Burry think Tesla will make in 2022? Well, Tom, if you own CCIV stock and you don't like what I'm saying, it might be time to sell, but I'm not your investment advisor. You tell me whether you think I'm wrong. Skyline Lucid says a lot of things. Do you believe they're true? Do you believe that they have better engineers than Tesla? If the answer is no, you know where we're going with this. So, Jim, I don't know what's going to happen with the first Lucid owner. That's going to be an interesting question. I mean, I think I can't say it is a fraud. I think it has to be a fraud. It can't, what they're claiming can't be true. I want to be wrong. I want them to prove me wrong, but I don't think it can be true. And when the truth comes out, and this is why they can't deliver a car on June 20th. They can't, the minute they deliver a car, the fraud is exposed. They can't deliver cars. That's the trap. So, I'm not saying I'm not telling you when to sell. Maybe you want to wait, because if they merge with Lucid and the stock spikes and goes to 70 or 80, maybe, and I don't play short-term games, maybe the stock's going to go to 100. I don't know. I just think it's going to go to 0 eventually. I'm not saying it's going to go to 0 next week. I just think, no, and look, you guys are listening to me. I appreciate the audience, but I have been saying this for months, and no one else is listening. And like 2-Bit Da Vinci disagrees with me. Did a video that was really a response to my video. He didn't say it explicitly, that he and I talked about it. It was a response to my video, and he's defending Lucid. He believes it, right? And he's a smart guy. I'm not saying he's dumb and I'm smart. He's a smart guy and he believes it. I don't know. I don't get it. I think Lucid is a play. We have this, bubble economy and bubble stock market, and there are genuine companies like Tesla, and there are companies that aren't genuine. And I don't know why people are buying companies that are obviously not genuine. Why does anyone own a share of Nikola? I don't understand. Why wouldn't everyone sell Nikola after they got caught running a truck downhill with no motor? How is anybody still holding that stock? Oh my God. We don't even know if the prototype could be a Tesla Model S with a shell on it. We don't know what that prototype is. It could be a Tesla Model S with a shell on it, some extra batteries for one purpose, and weight shaved off for another purpose. We just don't know what they did. I don't know anything about Qualcomm chips for 5G. My email is wredlich@gmail.com. wredlich@gmail.com. What do I think about Neo? I made a video about Neo. Check my channel, and I made a video about Neo. I don't think they're making a better car than Tesla. I think their battery swap idea is stupid. The battery swap concept is dumb. That's a lot. Think about the battery swap concept for more than a half hour. How many batteries do you need to make the battery swap concept work? And that, if you need twice as many batteries as you have vehicles, that means you have half as many vehicles. And then how much does it cost to make a battery swap station versus how much does it cost to put out 20 superchargers? I would bet you that it costs more to build a battery swap station than it costs to put out 20 superchargers, and 20 superchargers have more throughput than one battery swap station. That's why it's crazy. That's why it does. There's two reasons why it doesn't work. It doesn't work because you have to have extra batteries, and it doesn't work because the cost of putting battery superchargers is less than the cost of the throughput you get from superchargers is more for the dollar or the yuan than it is for the swap station. That swap station is big and complicated. It's got to cost a lot of money. Hey, Alex, I didn't say Lucid can't deliver on their promises. I'm predicting they won't deliver on their promises. Radio flyer. Do I have company stocks related with nickel? Good question, Lucas. I did buy the ETF LIT, which was recommended, I forget by, I don't know if it was Kathy Wood or somebody else suggested it. It's a lithium ion battery play. It's an interesting ETF. I don't have a big investment in it. It's a small investment, but I thought that was a good investment. Structural battery packs. Well, yeah, that's the other thing about battery swap is, structural battery pack makes the vehicle much more efficient, makes it perform better. If you have a battery swap vehicle, you can't make the vehicle more efficient. I'm pretty sure China has parking spots, and you can run wires to parking spots and put chargers in the parking spots. You're paying to park your car somewhere anyway, so put a charger there. And the person who owns the parking spot will make more money by be able to charge you more for parking by putting a charging station there. It's not that hard. It's a much better model than swap stations. Can Tesla get to 20K by 2027? 20K stock price? Yes. I mean, it could do a lot of things by 2027. I think it's going to go that high, but I'm not, that's not a price target. That's my estimate is it's going to be worth more than that, but that's my models. My models could be wrong. Yeah, maybe it was Ross Gerber who recommended LIT. LIT. I don't care if you think battery swap is for China. If you're asking my opinion, battery swap doesn't make sense in China either. You have to make twice as many batteries. You have to have batteries in stock. Do you have enough batteries on hand for when the demand comes in? How long is the line waiting to get the swap done? It takes 5 minutes to do the swap, but how many people are waiting in line to get their swap? Put in 20 superchargers, you get more throughput. This isn't rocket science. 20 superchargers are going to cost a lot less than one battery swap station, and 20 superchargers are going to have a lot more throughput than one charger station. It's a no-brainer. Then if you can contradict that simple analysis, let me know. Why not structural battery walls for homes? I like it. I don't think it's necessary, but I like it. Because I think the thing about that though, Elliot, is the cars are designed to last 10 years, and so are the battery packs. The homes are designed to last a lot more than 10 years, so I don't think it works. It's a cool idea, though. Any guess how much Tesla will pull back if there is a market correction? I don't make short-term stock predictions. I do not make short-term stock predictions. I am terrible at making short-term stock predictions. I don't do it. Starting manned robotaxi network now would boost the Tesla stock price. I don't think so. I think starting a manned robotaxi network would create all kinds of hassles for the company. That's a whole new thing to manage. It's a whole new labor pool to manage. It's a human resources nightmare. Some human driver causes an accident. It's bad PR for the company. Get the robotaxi network working well so you don't need human drivers, and then you're good. Battery swap requires human labor. That's true too. Battery swap makes sense with long charge time. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I'm sorry. It might make sense for you when you want a quick charge, but it doesn't make sense from a business model perspective. It just doesn't. That's my opinion. A Tesla should last 15 to 20 years. If you drive a Tesla as a robo-taxi, it'll probably last 10 years. If it's doing 100,000 miles a year, it's designed for 1,000,000 miles, it should last 10 years. If you don't use it as a robo-taxi, it should last longer. And probably a lot more than 15 to 20 years. If you use it normal use, it should last 40 years. But by the time 10 years are up, your robo-taxi, your Tesla will be obsolete. You'll want to upgrade, and no one it'll be recycling material. The future vehicles are. It's hard to grasp how much better the vehicles that will be made in 2030 will be compared to vehicles made in 2022. Mark, my theory is that a robo-taxi that is operated 100,000 miles a year that's designed for 1,000,000 miles will last 10 years. Yes, there are some cars that last longer than 10 years. I believe the average internal combustion engine vehicle lasts for about 150,000 miles. Some last longer, some don't. Negative and positive stock catalysts in 2021 for Tesla. I think if things go well at Giga Texas and Giga Berlin and the factories get up and running faster than people think, that could be a positive catalyst. Negative catalysts, I don't have a good answer to that. I have to think about that. Any chance supercharging stations can be privatized? I don't understand the question. They are privatized. Supercharging stations are privately owned by Tesla, I think. They're not owned by the government. Thank you, Dave Elliott. I agree with you completely on manned robotaxi. As a traffic lawyer, what's your professional opinion on who's responsible for inevitable traffic accidents, at least until it's perfect? My opinion is that if FSD is driving the car, Tesla is responsible for the accident if the Tesla vehicle causes the accident. Tesla insurance goes away. You will not need car insurance on a Tesla because a human will not be driving it. Tesla will be driving it, and Tesla will be responsible. Period. Okay, so Frozen Walkway, 166K so far in my Land Cruiser. Congratulations, you've shown an example of one car that got more than 150,000 miles. That does not contradict that the average vehicle does about 150,000 miles. What color Cybertruck? Cyber color. Did you view the iPhone in 2007 like you do Tesla now in terms of, wow, this is obviously a winning product? I didn't get it with iPhone. I actually got it with the Palm Pilot. Not the Palm Pilot, the Palm Pilot became a cell phone, and I can't remember what it was called. The Treo, the handspring Treo. I did do that. I think I 5x'd my money on 3Com when I bought that. I didn't see it with the iPhone. I did see it with another Mac. Before the iPhone, Apple had a Mac that I thought was really cool, and I bought stock in it. I made some money on it, and then I made the mistake of selling the stock. Do we know about side mirrors with Cybertruck? No, we do not. In the long term, could the fiasco in Texas be a boon for renewable energy? I think that's a bump in the road either way. I don't think that makes a huge difference. Maybe, I think the power problems that California is experiencing and the power problems that Texas is experiencing might increase the demand for Powerwall and Megapack a little bit. But the problem is there's not enough batteries to satisfy that demand now anyway. My wife's van has 190,000 miles on it, trying to hold on. The Rivian R1S is ready. Okay, yes, most of my cars were 200 to 300,000 miles. Okay, Mark, you know the shirt. It's not about you. Mark, do you disagree? Mark Potochnik, do you disagree that the average internal combustion engine vehicle lasts about 150,000 miles? If you disagree with that, get me some evidence that shows I'm wrong. Your personal experience is not evidence. That's an anecdote. My personal experience is not evidence. It's an anecdote. What do I think about Aptera? I don't think about Aptera. I probably should think about Aptera, but it has not reached my consciousness yet. I'm vaguely aware of it. I don't think about Arcimoto either. I think Arcimoto looks cute, but I think my general sense is, Aptera is the one that's like the solar car. I gotta think that's not going to be very good in a crash. Arcimoto's not going to be very good in a crash. And I think Arcimoto at least is too expensive for what you get. It's not going to compete well with the 2023 Tesla Compact. I'll say that. Have I tasted Tesla tequila? No, and I don't drink much. I drink very little. I said earlier in this live stream I didn't feel well last night because I drank a half a glass of wine. I'd lost my ability to drink. Do I think the Cybertruck will be able to float? I don't know. I don't think so, but who knows? It's possible. Stainless steel can have a wide range of metallic colors by heat treating. I would love if I was able to choose a steel color for my Tesla, it would be a blue steel. Have I looked at Proterra battery technology? No. I don't have a son in college. I have a daughter in college. What advice do you give students to study, go into as a career? Just curious as a new dad. I give, my daughter is studying musical theater in New York City, and I managed to persuade her to minor in math. I don't think any parent would advise their kid to go into musical theater for a career, but it's something that she loves, and I think it's really important to do something that you love. And I don't think my daughter is going to have to worry about money because I've made enough. So I have the freedom as a moderately upper middle class or moderately wealthy man that my kids don't have to worry about making money. I want them to be aware of it. I think that my kids will be motivated to find a way to be successful, but I'm more concerned about them finding something satisfying and happy. And I think she's ready to live a relatively poor existence to enjoy the lifestyle of being involved in musical theater, which is a wonderful lifestyle. Do I think Elon likes to drink a little? In 2030, Tesla buys Apple. I don't think so. 2025 stock price. I don't like picking stock prices. I like talking about where I think the company can go, and I have multiple videos where I talk about valuing Tesla in the future. But stock prices, like, Wall Street has too much influence over it. It's not what the stock price will be, it's what it should be. And what it is, what it will be, and what it should be. Like, I think Tesla's stock price right now should be at least $5,000 a share, and it isn't. So, why do you care what I think Tesla's stock price should be? If you want to know what the stock price will be, I'm the wrong guy to ask. I can tell you what I think it should be, and I could be wrong. Is $1 million a lot? It depends on your circumstances. $1 million is a lot if you live in a relatively low-cost place and you don't spend a lot of money. The way I would think about $1 million in any set amount of money that you've invested and you've built your pile. I have a video called "Build Your Pile." It's a investing advice for young people. Is figure whatever you have, assume it's going to grow 5% a year, and take 5% out a year so it stays steady. So you're steady. You have that amount of money forever. Not really forever. It's a model again. So if you have $1 million, that means you got $50,000 a year to spend. Is that enough for you? If $50,000 a year is enough for you, $1 million's great. If it's not enough for you, you got to get more money. So I think once you get to 2 million, you got 100,000 a year coming in. That's pretty good for most people. You get to 5 million, should be game over. If you can't survive on $250,000 a year coming in, you got to think about your life choices. I think $100,000 a share in 2030 is possible. I think 200,000 a share, based on my latest look at Tesla Energy, I'm thinking I may have been low when I said $200,000 a share. I just don't know. The possibilities for Tesla are amazing. People ask, what's the next Tesla? The next Tesla is Tesla. I do not engage in selling covered calls. I generally don't do anything with options. How important is the amount of cycles you can get out of a battery? It's hugely important. If you have a vehicle with 400 miles of range and you have 2,500 cycles, you have a 1,000,000-mile battery. 2,500 times 4,000 is 1,000,000 miles. If you only have 1,000 cycles, then you have a 400,000-mile battery. If you have a 300-mile range and 2,000 cycles, then you have a 600,000-mile battery. And it's not just the battery cycle life that it's capable of, it's also the certain chemistries cycle better. So with lithium iron phosphate, you can charge to 100% and it doesn't really hurt the battery life. With nickel-based chemistries, if you charge to 100%, it tends to hurt chemistry. Warren, what if Elon wants you to smoke weed with him during the interview? Then I will smoke weed with him during the interview. I doubt that's going to happen. If Tesla don't exist, what stock do you buy? I would have to think about that one. I don't have an easy answer to that. I own Amazon. Amazon's my second largest holding, so I guess I would say Amazon. If Cybertruck doesn't have side mothers bearers, do you think it will be street legal in most of the United States? I don't have an opinion on that. Honestly, I think that's kind of, don't you think that's kind of a dumb question? If it's not street legal in the United States, they'll put mirrors on it. Come on. What is the point of that question? What do you think the next innovation Tesla will bring to the market? Home HVAC. I think home HVAC is a fairly likely possibility. They've definitely talked about it. They definitely sound like they want to do it. It fits with doing solar roof and power walls. I think the question is, do they have the bandwidth and the staff to make that one happen? That's a good one. What will happen to the batteries once they've run their life? They will be recycled. There are companies that are developing, including JB Straubel, who is the former CTO of Tesla. He is developing a company called Redwood Materials to recycle old batteries. Is Tesla the only stock? No. I love Amazon. Do you think that FSD will be able to detect a speeding car coming up from behind with a potential for rear-end crash, maybe a warning to the driver in the SFSD car? I believe that FSD and autopilot, even the lesser non-FSD Teslas, already detect speeding cars coming up from behind with a potential for rear-end crash and will move the car to avoid the collision. I believe that already exists in Tesla cars today. Not even without FSD, I believe it already has that. It's like a crash avoidance feature that it already has. This was in a conversation in Clubhouse today. Somebody said that. Tyler asks, do you think because of Tesla 2020 run up in stock price, people have gotten a bias that it shouldn't be worth more because it has gone up so much already? Yes, I definitely think there's a psychology thing there that affects a lot of investors who don't think about how the business works. People don't do a deep dive into the business. I see very few people talking about the battery revenue model, which is what they should be talking about, and Wall Street just doesn't think that way. If Tesla constantly improves battery, doesn't the number of batteries required decrease after year after year given weight reduction? The number of batteries required per vehicle reduces, but you increase the number of vehicles produced, so you need more batteries, and you need more batteries for grid storage. Why not push your HOA for power packs for the whole neighborhood? We actually had a conversation like that about things we could do to just power walls for our HOA building so that people would have a place to go on a power outage to get hot coffee and charge their phones. But getting an HOA to do anything is hard. And I had a committee and then no one showed up to the second committee meeting and I gave up. It wasn't that important to me. Do I think Tesla or SpaceX will create an electric plane? No. Possible, but no, I don't think so. Do I think Tesla will discontinue Model X someday? Yes, I think they will discontinue Model X in a few years. I think it becomes irrelevant in the age of robotaxi. But I could be wrong. I mean, if it doesn't cost them that much to keep making them and they're making money on them, then they keep making them. Jim Bates, limited availability for most Tesla products. Warren, can you compile a short list of all the products Tesla is manufacturing? If you look at my first battery revenue model, I did that already. I did a video about the battery revenue model a few months ago. I think I said Tesla would go to $40,000 a share in that video. I think it's got a white background on the thumbnail. Will you participate in the X-Prize carbon removal competition? I am not that guy. What are your thoughts on Tesla removing standard Model Y? We talked about that in the news and in the transition already, and I don't want to talk about it again. I don't think we know what it means. What do I think about inverting needs mining? I don't know what that is. All right, I'm sorry. I'm just getting really tired. I can feel it. I've been doing this for, wow, we're approaching 3 hours. All right, so I'm done. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to Vasa, the Swedish law firm Vasa Law Firm, for supporting this channel, and all my Patreon supporters. Please check the description and links below to support this channel on Patreon. Check out the t-shirts. One of my favorite t-shirts is sort of like my stick figure drawings of Starship, stretched Starship. Thank you so much to Jim and Mark for helping out with moderating. And I am exhausted. So thanks everyone for watching. Have a good day.